Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner. This is Don Frye.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Submission Radio episode 100. That's right, we made it. Dennis Grove here with Kasper Zalowski on a landmark episode of Submission Radio. Kasper, the 100. I think the Queen is supposed to send us a letter when we get to this age. But even though we're a bit older, we're still as sprightly as ever.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Queen to rock up with that letter and words of encouragement. I expect it. I expect it's just lost in the goddamn postal system. But hey, episode 100.
Your show, boys.
Yeah, exactly. Episode 100, we got to roll out the red carpet for our sexy guests. And guess what? It is all heavyweight action on this action-packed episode of Submission Radio. Stipe Miocic, the world heavyweight champion, fresh off his victory at UFC 203, is going to be returning to the show. We figured we've had him on so many times since way before this title campaign. We've got to get him back on and, talk about life. Bill Goldberg, I bet you didn't see that coming. Bill Goldberg, who has been on Submission Radio in the past, he's a man that we love speaking to, and we wanted him to weigh in on this whole CM Punk situation and these rumors that he's going to be coming back to action. Don Frye, like we said, all heavyweight action, a cornerstone of Submission Radio. He's been with us since the beginning. Always fun times with Don Frye. We figured, hey, MMA analyst, we need one. Yep, Don's the man to get on. And also, we'll be having some fun times with another man who's been with us since the very beginning. Tommy Toehold will be stopping by, making a bit of an appearance to celebrate Submission Radio episode 100 in true Tommy Toehold style. Also, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. We've got Dave Meltzer to talk about all the action and all the crazy things happening in MMA. And of course, Adam Hill will be breaking down things with us like UFC Hidalgo, talking about UFC Melbourne, that's unraveling. Robert Whittaker, what's going on with him, what to do with him, GSP, what's next for him, and of course the man Chael Sonnen, who just went to Bellator. Adam will be weighing in on all of those things. So yeah, it's a stacked show.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this one for a while, guys, so welcome. And if this is the first episode that you're listening to, you picked a good one. Submission Radio 100. This is a big one. I think you guys will enjoy it. But if you have just started listening, check us out on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Anyone can DM us. We've opened it up to everyone. So you want to give us a message, send us something, ideas, thoughts, feedback, do it. Do it through the Twitter. We love hearing from you. The Facebook page, of course. You can like us, facebook.com/SubmissionRadioAUS. and submissionradio.com, where you can go on and get your official Submission Radio merchandise. We've got a couple of designs there, but there's a new one coming out because UFC Melbourne is coming, and maybe you guys want to rep the fact that Submission Radio is your fellow Aussie friends. You'll be able to do that. New designs coming soon, but jump on there and have a look at the designs we already have. If you do buy something, once you get it, make sure to tweet us the photo. We will make sure to DM that mofo, and also maybe even talk about it on the show. Who knows? We love hearing from you guys, and we love to share your photos and tweets and messages on Facebook, so make sure to hit us up.
Yeah, plenty of action, some sexy new designs coming. And of course, one of the ways that we've made it this far is from all your reviews, guys, especially on iTunes. They are like liquid gold for us. If you do enjoy the show, if you do want to support the show and do something nice for us, feel free to go on, give us a review on iTunes, give us however many stars you think we're worth, give us an honest review. You don't even have to write anything. We'll accept a full stop at 3 o'clock in the morning. But if you do that, we will see it, we will read it, and we will definitely appreciate it. I think it's time to get the show on the road. Enough chit-chat from us. It's time to get our first guest on the line. And Dennis, I believe you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys, joining us here on the program is a man that needs very little introduction. He will be available as a character for all pre-orders of the new WWE 2K17 game, arguably one of the biggest stars in pro wrestling history. He held both the WCW and WWE World Heavyweight Championships. He now joins us here on Submission Radio to help us celebrate our 100th episode. Who's next, you might ask? None other than Bill Goldberg. Bill, welcome to Submission Radio.
It's an honor to be involved with you guys, man. It's a monumental accomplishment, 100th episode. So fire away, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. The honor is all ours, Bill. Now, thanks for your time. We know you're an incredibly busy man. We also know that you've got a great muscle car collection, which includes a 1965 Shelby Cobra and a 429 Mustang. Tell us, what have you been driving around recently, and have you had any new additions to the Goldberg collection?
Oh, God, recently, man. Recently, I've been driving a 92 Porsche around. It's something that I've stolen from my wife because the seat, unfortunately, the switch is broken and it won't go forward, so she can't drive it right now, and so I'm the only person that can keep the engine intact, and so I have to drive it every day. As far as adding anything to the collection as of late, no, man. Other than building her a 46 Willys Jeep, probably 4 or 6 months ago, I haven't delved into any of the projects as of late. But doesn't mean that I'm not up there every day tinkering on something.
Wow, imagine that. Seeing Gold being in that car, that would be amazing. Now, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, Bill, and before we talk to you about some of the other big news going on, we want to quickly touch on UFC 203 with you, which had the UFC debut of CM Punk. Now, before we get your thoughts on the actual fight, we have to find out, what were your thoughts when you found out he'd be giving this thing a try? Because a lot of people were skeptical of him getting this opportunity.
A lot of people ask me in the beginning, and in all honesty, it's like asking me about the state of professional wrestling right now. It's hard for me to pass judgment on something or somebody that I'm not fully informed about. CM Punk and I never crossed paths when I was with the WWE, and I wasn't on the independent circuit, and so I'd never met the guy. I only know from what I hear and what I read, and to see a guy 37 or 34, I don't know how old he is, but to see a guy in an advanced age who's a professional at some sport, at a given sport, and then wanting to transition to something else, obviously you look at motives behind it. And I truly believe that the kid loves fighting. It's something that, like Brock, trying professional football. I don't liken it to him doing fighting because he's that's a logical transition. But for him to play football, without any high school or any college experience and try to play in the NFL, that's like CM Punk trying to go into the UFC without any amateur fights. But Brock made a bigger splash, I think, than CM Punk did. But at the end of the day, man, I'm not going to fault him for anything except for being not smart enough to understand the difference in quality as far as experience and as far as ability is concerned, and let that override his desire to pursue a dream. I think that, working with Rufus, man, I mean, his hands should have been impenetrable after 2 years. Not impenetrable, but at the end of the day, it's tough to teach a guy who's not good with his hands how to fight with his hands. It's something that he can practice, but if it's a motor skill question, or if it's a coordination question, or if it's just something that the guy's not used to doing, or if he has bad habits, he's behind the 8 ball. And when you're behind the 8 ball in a sport, where the discrepancy between you and the competition is huge, you need every advantage you can get. And obviously he had jiu-jitsu background. I don't know to what extent, but at the end of the day, I mean, I can empathize with the guy, because you're talking to a guy who wanted to fight for glory for a little while, but they couldn't understand the financial windfall that they would acquire with it, and it just wasn't a reality as far as sensible business is concerned. But at the end of the day, I can empathize with him, because I'm a mark for the martial arts. I'm a mark for fighting sports. I trained with Simon Marcus a couple of weeks ago, 2 months removed from getting both knees operated on, because it's an opportunity that you can't pass up. And why do you do it? Well, there's a huge discrepancy. There's a huge difference between talent there and experience. But I mean, I can make up for it with sheer stupidity and my ability to be hit and my strength and my, I've learned a little bit over the years. And I mean, it's just these opportunities you can't pass up. If CM Punk gets an opportunity, to fight in the UFC, then it may cloud his judgment as far as performance and his ability to compete. So, I don't fault the guy one bit, except for his inability to be as prepared as he should have been before he stepped in there, I believe. But injuries, postponed his debut, and there's reasons that fall into it. But at the end of the day, my hat's off to him. But
yeah, no, I mean,
the result was not what anybody wanted to see, except for the doubters who thought that he was doing it purely for financial gain, which I can tell you 100%. I don't know him, but he wouldn't have risked. He wouldn't have risked what he's worked for a number of years to go out there just for money, because he could have stayed in the WWE and done that. This is a kid that followed his dream. You got to look at the aspect of what Dana White does as a promoter and what he's been preaching for years, and then what he turns around and does. It's more along the lines of a Scott Coker move, but at the end of the day, Scott Coker's pulling in, good ratings with what he puts on. So, it's a difference of philosophy, but it's a huge discrepancy in ability.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people point to the fact that he made $500,000, but I don't think they realize that Punk, he's not the most materialistic guy, and he's obviously got a lot of money from his WWE background. Given how the fight played out, I'm wondering, Bill, do you think he should continue to fight in the UFC? Do you think he should continue to fight in general, or if maybe he should go down to like a lower level show?
Well, there's no question he should not fight in the UFC. That would be blasphemy. It would be a slap in the face to all the guys who worked their asses off to make it to, prelims on Fox, on undercards, and on the main event card. At the end of the day, from a promoter's standpoint, from a competitor's standpoint, from his standpoint, there's no logic to him stepping in that octagon again. If he still has the passion for it and wants to train and compete, then yeah, lower level shows are where he needs to be. I mean, because at the end of the day, he'll get seat time. I that's my analogy, because I like to race cars. But the more seat time you get, the better you are at something. And I spent 8 3-minute rounds this morning, and though I didn't go 100% and I didn't kick, I just went hands. At the end of the day, every little bit helps you. So the more time he has at his new craft or his passion, the better he's going to get at it. The more comfortable he'll be at it.
Yeah, and you mentioned before how it was a bit of a Scott Coker move for Dana White to put this fight together. We were talking about it with a few MMA analysts last week. We were talking about the fact that Mickey Gall was a bit of a tough challenge for CM Punk. Do you think UFC is a promotion, and Dana White, knowing that CM Punk didn't really have that much experience going in, could have probably picked a challenge for him that was a little bit, I suppose, more matched up with his own skill set, because he have a kid who's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No matter how many years you're training with Duke and the amazing team over there, like Anthony Pettis and Tyron Woodley, you're not going to be able to catch up to that discrepancy, even if you do get your striking up to a certain level. Do you think the UFC could have picked a more reasonable opponent? And do you think maybe they didn't because they wanted to maybe even prove a point with Punk?
Only Dana White can answer that question. That's a Vince McMahon, a Dana White. That's at the end of the day, they do things because when it comes down to it, they have a reason for it. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of ways to look at it. If you throw a fish to CM Punk, then you're going to get bitched at. If you throw him to the wolves, like ultimately they did, then you're going to get bitched at. So you can't really ever do the right thing. He chose to do it the way he did it, and for the future, it blew up in their face. But like I say, at the end of the day, it was an experiment. But it may have been a friendship thing. He may have done it just because he likes Punk. I don't know. At the end of the day, he's got the stroke and he can do whatever he wants. But it just depends on what perspective you look at it from. Do you look at it from an analyst perspective? Do you look at it from a promoter's perspective? Do you look at it from a fan's perspective? Or do you look at it from an athlete's perspective? Because it can be, it can be translated so many different ways.
Well, Bill, you mentioned how you did rounds today, and you've been training hard for many, many, many years. You've got your own gym as well. When you see CM Punk giving this thing a go, I mean, you mentioned glory, it didn't work out. It seemed like it was monetary reasons, but does it sort of give you that itch again to maybe revisit that avenue and maybe have an exhibition fight in glory, or is the sort of door closed on that chapter for good?
I don't think the door will ever be closed on that. I mean, I think when the commission would look at me because I was so old and they laughed at me, that would be the door closing. But hey, man, I like to have fun. At the end of the day, getting punched and kicking people and punching people, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. It means you're alive, and I enjoy it, and I love to learn. And at the end of the day, there's nobody that knows everything, and so practice makes perfect. Even at 49 years old, I still really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy learning. I'm the student of the martial art, and I'm a student of what it stands for. And it's a way of life. It's become kind of a way of life for me. It's an addiction, and it satiates a lot of things for me. And it also gives me a challenge, So never say never. You never say never.
Well, the exciting news for fans is you will be a part of the new WWE 2K17 game with two versions of yourself, a WCW and a WWE one, which will both be playable. We know you're not the biggest gamer, but what made you want to be a part of this new game?
Oh, I would say 98% my son, and I don't even know where the other 2% is. But yeah, I'm appreciative to be able to be handed an opportunity to immortalize myself on a video game for my son to play in present day. Obviously, when I wrestled, it was prior to his birth, so he hasn't had many or any things in real time to experience with me being a part of what I used to do. This is something in real time where he can see on a commercial his dad. So that's the onus behind it. That's the reasoning behind it. And that is, I'm greatly appreciative of any adulation that the fans would show towards me. And this is a way that I can pay them back in some small way that I can control. And, it also keeps me out there too. So, and it's fun. It's enjoyable to sit there and play myself as a playable character in a video game.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that it's been a while since you wrestled, because the last time WWE fans remember you, it was at WrestleMania 20, but fans still regard you as one of their favorite wrestlers. Now, we saw that you've been promoting your live appearance on Bischoff on Wrestling Podcast, which is on September 25th in Indianapolis, but by coincidence, this is the same place and on the same day as WWE's Clash of Champions, where Brock Lesnar takes on Randy Orton. We know there's still business to be had between you and Brock. Is there any chance fans may see you attend or possibly even feature in the event, since you'll be right around the corner?
Oh man, I'll be featured on Bischoff's podcast event. That's about it in Indianapolis. It's purely coincidence, man. It is what it is. I'm by no means trying to bilk off of WWE being in town. It was something that I found out kind of afterwards. But for a promoter, it's a great idea. To get Bischoff and I together anywhere is a great idea, because I haven't seen and or been around him since I left the world of professional wrestling at WCW. To be on his podcast and for him to ask me those smart-ass questions that I know he's going to ask me, I think that may be very entertaining for the people who attend, because hopefully the ones in the first couple of rows will get some blood splattered on him when I squeeze his head like a pimple. But the truth is, he's the one that got me into the business. He and I have a long history, and we got a lot of dirt on each other. So I don't know how deep we're going to go, but I think it's going to be quite entertaining for everybody. And like I say, Brock knows where the gym is. Brock knows where I live, and I'm not contractually bound to any deal with WWE, so I have no business being around anything that they're doing right now, and it's purely by coincidence. And but hey, I could get a phone call between now and then. You never know.
Yeah, and just checking, because the WWE, they would have seen the news. The news has been everywhere. No one's reached out from you from the company just yet to invite you to the event since you're going to be in the same town?
Oh man, they don't do that. They don't. They've got their own. They got their own agenda, man. I'm a 49-year-old has-been over here that just so happens to be in their new video game, and it's an honor for me to do it. It's an honor for me to take place in it. And I have no issues with them anymore. Like I said, to be able to do anything with them at this point is a true testament to my ability to deliver for my son. So that's it.
All right, Bill, we appreciate the time. Just before we let you go, we'll let you go in just a second, but we just wanted to ask you mentioned in Brock Lesnar, just curious what you thought of his performance against Mark Hunt at UFC 200.
You know, man, the problem is that UFC's got too many damn events now, because that was so long ago. I've seen so many events since then. I'm kind of convoluted in that one runs into the next one. You know, whether it's Werdum fighting this last weekend or you know, whatever it may be, man. It's there's so many to run together. But you know, obviously, Hunt. It didn't. Man, I don't know. How am I going to pass judgment on this fight? I'm surprised that Hunt didn't attack him a lot more. I think that his stand-up ability could be exploited a lot more so than it was, and I think it could have been a huge difference in that fight. I think he's also shown the ability to stop takedowns a lot better than his first match in Pride, which I was there for. So,
Wow.
you know, it was a lot. It was different than I thought it was going to go, truthfully. But I'd like to see it again. I really would.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation as well, because it was a cross-promotional situation between the WWE and the UFC. I'm just curious, what do you think about this whole cross-promotion thing that they're doing? And Conor McGregor calling the WWE roster dweebs, and now Randy Orton sort of trash-talking Conor McGregor. When you see all of this happening, do you just see it as a big work, or do you like seeing this?
I thought the funniest thing I've ever seen was Orton calling him Connor McDonald. I think that is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Hey man, you have to embrace it. It's the same crowd. One grows up and feeds into the other. You can't tell me that, and I said it before, but 75% of the guys wouldn't die to be professional wrestlers that are fighting, and vice versa. We have a lot of respect for each other. A lot of us train in martial arts, and a lot of them walk around and act like they're us. So the cross-promotion, Dana White's Vince McMahon in training. I said that 20 years ago. I think it's business. I think it's smart business, whether it's what's her name at WrestleMania, whether Connor's working this thing, you know, I can tell you the one thing. I was around when Brock responded to Connor, and Brock, nothing that Brock does is a work. So the words that came out of his mouth, he fully believes, and I do also. And I think that if it wasn't a work, then it's a sad situation when you have to talk crap about other organizations that you know your paths are never gonna cross competitively. So at the end of the day, you're kind of like a keyboard warrior, unless you want to step into a guy's gym, or unless you want to do it on TV and meet in the middle. I always thought that was kind of cheap, but he doesn't know what he's talking about if he actually thinks that. I think that the cross promotion is brilliant, as long as it doesn't get hokey for the UFC. And as long as WWE can capitalize on the realism of what the UFC brings, it sure enhances Brock's stock when he walks over to do sports entertainment. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously CM Punk's appearance on UFC 203 did a lot in terms of pay-per-view buys, and it's good for business on everybody's sort of end. Final question, Bill, and then we're letting you go. Again, with Brock, the fact that he obviously failed a post-fight drug test with anti-estrogen, it upset a lot of people, a lot of fans. Where do you sort of land on that situation? Do you still want to see him come back and fight in the UFC again?
Absolutely, man. And, I don't even know what that thing is he took. I don't... I've never broached anything along those subject matters with Brock. That's his business. And like I said, what you just said is the second time I've ever heard of whatever that was, and the first time is when I read it. I don't even know what the hell it does. But obviously, if you're cheating, then you should be reprimanded, period, end of story. And do I think that he deserves an opportunity to go back? Absolutely, because people have been caught before and had served suspensions and paid fines and come back, and at the end of the day, they're instant heels. So, I mean, it further adds to the mystique of Brock, except for the fact that he was turning the leaf and being a baby face with that last fight. So, that's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah, and he also came into that fight as a Canadian, which a lot of people thought would turn him into a heel. But
Bill, thank you so much for your time. All right, guys.
If you're lucky enough to be located in Indianapolis on the 25th of September, make sure to buy tickets to Bischoff on Wrestling Live. You can do that at markoutmoments.com. They are only $20. If me and Casper were there, we'd just buy a bunch of tickets just for ourselves to make sure we've got enough area to enjoy this thing. This thing's going to be a can't miss event. Better hurry up because tickets are going to sell out to this thing really, really quickly. And also make sure to follow Bill on Twitter at Goldberg to keep up to date with all of his latest projects. And also check out his official website, www.billgoldberg.com. He is always in a cool classic car, and there's always something exciting happening with Goldberg, so make sure you keep an eye on it. Bill, it's been such a pleasure having you on this program. Thank you for making this 100th episode special to us.
You know what? It's an honor, man. And again, like I said, it's an honor to be involved with such esteemed guests, and those two are legends in their own right, man. Stipe, what he's been able to do over the past couple of years, very honorable, man. Hats off to his dedication and his ability to come back from being leveled and whatever it may be. But and that Don Frye character, man, you better watch out for him. He is one piece of work, but he's an idol of mine, and I am just honored to call him a friend. So you're in great company, gentlemen. So congratulations on your 100th episode.
Thank you. And we know you were actually the first person to call Don when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He mentioned that to us. So there we go. How's that for destiny? Bill, we'll let you go. We really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll talk in the future.
You got it, gentlemen. Have a good one.
Bill Goldberg on Submission Radio episode 100. I mean, really making this day special here for me and Casper. As he mentioned, Don Frye, while we're on the topic of it, he is going to be on the show later on, as we mentioned in the intro. But when you go through the process of organizing these interviews, you end up calling the person a few times, locking in a time and booking it in. While we were in that process, we ran into Don Frye's new voicemail. And as you'd expect, it's as great as you would imagine. Now, we thought, hey, Submission Radio, episode 100, anything goes on this one. So we decided to put it on, record it for you guys. Check it out and listen to this.
This is Don Frye. I'm not here at the moment, obviously, so leave a message, and I feel like it'll get back to you. If not, hold your breath till your head explodes. All righty? Have a good day.
At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
How about that? How crazy is that? That's Don Frye's actual voicemail. I couldn't believe it. I mean, people always accuse him of playing a character and being in character. If he's in character, he's like Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Tropic Thunder. He doesn't break character until he's recorded the DVD extras. He will be Don Frye forever. There is literally only one Don Frye. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. We got a bunch more guests to come. We've got a lot more discussion to come. Tons of things to talk about. But for now, I think it's time to move on to our next guest. I'm pumped. He's kind of a big deal, and I feel like Dennis, I think you would say he's a pretty big, integral part of Submission Radio.
How could we not invite our next guest onto our 100th program? He's been on countless episodes, providing us with laughs and many classic moments along the way. You saw him defend his heavyweight title this past weekend against Alistair Overeem. And before he goes on his honeymoon, he's been kind enough to join us today. The undisputed UFC heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic. Welcome back to episode 100 of Submission Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I feel special.
You should feel special. I mean, heavyweight champion, submission radio, they go hand in hand. And this is a crazy situation because you're actually at the station right now. So we never know when you're going to get a call and when you're going to have to duck out like Batman in the middle of the night. So let's get straight into it. You've got a honeymoon going, but you're also currently moving house. When's the big move-in officially happening, Stipe?
In a couple weeks, actually.
Wow. Well,
we don't know exactly, so we're figuring that out now. So it'll be at least for sure mid-October, if not earlier.
Well, the most important question is, have you given the new house a name yet? Because we've come up with 4 variations, and if you had to choose one, which one would it be? The Cleveland Palace of Doom, the Steep Cave of Mayhem, the Croatian Manor, or finally Stipe and Ryan's Champions B&B? The last one is a business idea.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go with the third one, the Croatian Manor.
The Croatian Manor. I can see Crow Cobb doing the pop-in, just coming by every now and then. It is the Croatian Manor after all. Let's quickly go over the floor plan of this new house, Stipe. You're the UFC champion, and UFC champ people just don't need. What kind of man cave area are we talking about here, and how big is the big screen TV going to be?
Well, it's in the basement. It's a man cave. It's got a projector screen, so I think it's like 75 or 100 inches.
Wow.
It's got its own thing. It's pretty sweet. You know, it was nice. I was like, sweet, because I was going to put a TV down there, but it already came in with it. So I said, that's great. So I'm excited. But also I'm going to put another one in. We have a 3,000 square foot barn, and we're going to put that. I'm going to put a little living couches and, like a TV in there so I can watch football games and stuff during football season and stuff.
What did you say, Steve? You've got a barn there.
Yeah, it's like a 3,000 square foot barn. It's like real nice.
Are you going to have animals in there as well, or is this more just for entertainment?
No, it's nothing like that. It's a barn, but it's like it's metal. You know what I mean? It's more of like the guy before me that owned it. It was a shop for like work and stuff. He put his stuff in there for work.
Ah, nice.
So it's almost like a garage, like a huge garage.
Yeah, you might have a few animals in there, animals from the firehouse trying to drink all of your beer. Am I right? Now, quickly, before we get into UFC 203, we have to mention that we enjoyed your embedded episodes leading into the event. But be honest with us. What happened when the wife saw the episode of you hanging up on her?
She's used to it. She's just, one day she'll probably stab me when I'm sleeping.
I love it. I mean, obviously, we know Ryan is a great girl, but what do you think the funniest prank is that you've ever pulled on her that you can share with us? And how do you prepare for the impending doom that awaits once the prank is over?
There's a lot of pranks I've done to her. I think the funniest one is when you walk in our house now, right to the left, we have a closet, a sliding door closet, and you can't see, it's got a mirror on it, so you can't see anything on it. So I always hide in there where the coats are. And so when she reaches in to open the door, I grab her hand.
What have you? Because obviously you never know when she's going to go in there. Has there ever been a situation where you plan on hiding from her and you're camping out for hours and hours just waiting for her? Because I can see you being that dedicated.
No, I've done that multiple times, yes. But nothing. Usually she comes straight to the closet to put her shoes in there because our dogs like to chew on shoes, so we always put our shoes away. So I know she's going to walk in there first.
Wow. Okay, well, let's go back to last weekend. You admitted during the post-fight press conference that fighting in Brazil was easier than fighting in your hometown of Cleveland. Obviously, everybody loves you in Cleveland. There was a lot of stuff going on. What exactly made it more difficult for you?
Just trying to please everyone, make sure they got their tickets and stuff like that, and just a lot of the hype. I like traveling and just doing my thing. And listen, I love Cleveland. I'll fight there again. I love the city more than anything. It was just easier because I didn't have any other stresses to worry about.
Were nerves a factor as well? Like, was it a case when you were entering or in the arena where you felt like you had to live up to the crowd's expectations?
A little bit, not really. I just, I was definitely nervous just because, I'm fighting a big man that's really good and such a decorative fighter. And Overeem, he's an amazing fighter. And then also, just everyone's screaming, going crazy. I got chills walking out. And, I just didn't want to get caught up in the moment.
Well, speaking of fans, you in particular had a very passionate supporter at the open workouts. Although there was only what seemed like 100 people there, he gave Alistair Overeem a hard time, heckling him for the entire duration of the workout and scrum. Did you happen to run into that fan, and have you watched the footage of him doing his work on Overeem?
Yeah, actually, I met him at the hotel and stuff, and I met him at the open workout. He's a good kid, he's crazy. But
did you slip him? Did you slip him a $20 note, or was this all real?
No, it was all him, man. That was fun. It was all him, but he's a good dude, man. He's a good guy. We talked for a little bit. I met him at the open workout, so we're just hanging out, a little bit.
Wow, that would have been an amazing moment for him. I mean, if you had to pick one moment from the entire lead up in Cleveland that stands out to you, a fan, something someone said to you, a gift, a post, or something, what was it?
Just walking out. That was probably one of the most amazing things I ever felt.
What? Let me ask you. I know you had to sort of tune it out because you just had a title fight to go into. But what went through your mind at that moment?
I was like, damn, this is crazy. I just couldn't believe it because I fought in Cleveland before, but nothing to that magnitude.
Yeah. Cleveland definitely delivered that night. The actual night itself was an interesting one. Before we get to some of the other fights on the card, what did you make of CM Punk's debut? And did you say anything to him after his fight? Because I know you guys sort of hang out around the same area in the back.
Yeah, just don't keep your head up, man. It's not hard to get knocked down. It's about how you get up. He's a great dude. He's a real good dude. I give him all the credit in the world for training like that and going in there and doing his first fight in the UFC just like that against a tough dude like that.
I'm wondering, because there's obviously a big debate if he deserved that $500,000 payday. A lot of the MMA purists are sort of up in arms about it. And obviously the fact that if he should fight in the UFC again, he's a big draw. The pay-per-view numbers did well. He gets fans talking. But where do you sit on, I guess, the payday and his future in the UFC?
I mean, it's the world we live in, you know what I mean? Like, people want to see him fight. I mean, should get compensated, It's just anything you do, And listen, man, like he brought a lot of pay-per-view sales, helped me out a lot. So, I mean, listen, man, I give him all the credit for going out there and doing what he did, man. I praise him for that, man. It wasn't his night, but listen, he trained, and he gave all he's got. Unfortunately, it was going to lose again, but he still went out there.
I know he trained over at Strong Style leading into the event a little bit with his coaches. Do you reckon you maybe could invite him down there at some point and even show him a few moves yourself?
Oh, no, he's good, man. When he's at Duke, Duke's an amazing coach. So, I mean, he's got nothing to worry about with Duke. He's an amazing coach, too.
Another sort of interesting point of the night was this whole fiasco with Werdum and Brown. First off, the fact that the referee didn't stop the fight when Werdum broke Brown's finger. Did you get a chance to see that, and what did you think of Verdum's performance that night?
Oh, yeah, he did. He did what he was supposed to do. He won the fight, and it sucked, for Travis broke his finger, and then, the craziness that happened at the end of the fight, and push cooking his coach and all that. It was, I wasn't trying to look too much into it. I was trying to worry about my fight. I was up next, so that's all I was caring about.
Yeah, we want to ask you about what's going to be happening with the Werdum and Cain Velasquez in a second, but you mentioned what happened at the end of the fight where Travis's coach Edmund yelled a few things at Werdum, which saw him kick him back, and a brawl almost broke out. It was a pretty crazy moment. You mentioned that you sort of saw that in the back, but where do you sort of sit on that? Because people are divided. Obviously, at the end of a fight, your emotions are high and adrenaline's going through your body, so things happen. So a lot of people are sort of putting that down to that. Other people are saying that Werdum should get some kind of fine for doing that. Where do you land on that?
Honestly, I'm not even worried about it because I had nothing to do with it. So I'm just gonna keep quiet. Like honestly, I mean, who knows? I wasn't there. I didn't hear what happened. I just just saw what happened. But there could be a lot more to it. We don't know. So I mean, listen, I'm just gonna keep quiet, and it is what it is.
Good man. Well, the big moment, of course, of the night came when you beat Alistair Overeem in the main event. There were a few fascinating moments in that fight where Alistair he moved around a lot. He was trying to reset and create distance, but at some point it almost looked like he was sort of jogging around the octagon. What was going through your mind as that was happening and, you were chasing him around that octagon?
I just, to keep moving and try to cut him off. The only time I stopped moving is when he crushed me with that left hand in my face. But, I was just trying to, cut him off. And eventually, I started cutting him off better and started getting my shots off like I wanted.
Did you actually expect him to run around like that? Because obviously, Jackson Winklejohn, great camp, and Alistair's known for resetting, creating distance, but we haven't really seen him jog around the octagon before. Were you sort of, in the back of your mind, I suppose, afraid not to commit too much to running after him as he's jogging around that octagon in case there's some kind of other sneaky plan going on?
Yeah, of course. You always got to be careful. But, I know he's trying to keep his distance, and he was doing the right thing he wanted to do. He was listening to his coaches, keeping his distance, trying to, keep me at a long distance where I wasn't going to be able to get in close and, get in the pocket and, start using my boxing better. So he was doing his thing, man. And totally, I expected that.
Talk to us about that finishing sequence, Stipe, where you hit him with those last few punches on the ground and you saw he was out. Did you expect the fight to finish in that fashion? Did you sort of visualize that particular sequence leading into the fight? And I'm wondering if you thought, I know you're always sort of ready for 5 rounds, but did you think the fight was going to finish in the first round and that quickly?
No, I mean, listen, when I got him down, I was like, I got to finish this, man. I got him where I want him, and, I was hitting him with shots, too. I was like, I just got to get one in there, and luckily I did. I got that one I needed in there, and, it's when I kept hitting him with the right hand, and it worked out well.
Well, speaking of the Cleveland crowd, I mean, your entrance was huge, but that moment when you stopped him and everybody just exploded, you jump up on that cage, everything's just, it's like a movie pretty much. I will be honest, you could throw that in any kind of Hollywood movie, and I think anybody would be happy with an ending like that. What was going through your mind? You're the champion. You have your first title defense. It's in front of Cleveland, and you did it, and everyone's just going crazy.
It was amazing, man. That crowd was something that was just it's surreal, man. Like, I still get chills thinking about, goosebumps thinking about that. I mean, I got the best fans in the damn sport. I'm telling you right now.
It was definitely a massive feel-good moment. Obviously, when people think of Cleveland, they think of LeBron. He's had a lot of good moments like that in his career. Was this your sort of LeBron moment? And did you feel like the king of Cleveland at that point?
No, man. Listen, I'm just happy that the Cleveland has something to celebrate. We have a championship, another championship to celebrate. It's not like they can't say anything anymore. We're City of Champions. We win. And it's great.
Yeah, it really looks like it means a lot for Cleveland. It's really great to see. We know that you're one of the nicest guys in the UFC. Did you speak to Overeem after the fight? And if so, what did you say to him?
I mean, we talked a little bit, before they announced that I was a winner. And I just said, hey, man, you kick like a mule. You're a tough dude. Keep your head up. And that was about it. He was getting checked out and then do his stuff.
There were some comments made afterwards by Joe Rogan about how, he doesn't want to really interview fighters after they've been knocked out, after Overeem claimed that you tapped in the post-fight interview, and, unfortunately they had to replay that guillotine over and over again. Do you think he's got a point about that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been there too. I mean, when I fought Struve, I was a little messed up in the head too, And I understand where he's coming from with that, it's because you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're saying.
Okay, because, it's kind of a crazy situation because you win the belt and you're on your way out of the octagon, but you must have heard him saying that he thought that you tapped. So did it sort of, I know you're a nice guy, but it sort of annoy you or take anything away from your win at that point? Or was it more of a situation where you sort of felt bad for Overeem because it was a pretty awkward situation seeing the replay over and over, proving there was no tap?
No, man, I understand, you just, like I said, I've been in that situation before, and you just don't know what you're saying. You kind of don't remember stuff, what's going on, and it's just tough. It's a tough situation. I mean, it is what it is, man. It just sucks, and listen, it's just bad timing, I guess.
All right, well, let's move on to that night. You're obviously in Cleveland, your hometown. The crowd loves you. I mean, winning the belt must have been amazing, but how crazy was it for you celebrating your first title defense in Cleveland? I mean, we imagine there's invitations from LeBron, Drew Carey. Who did you end up going with, and what was that night like?
Oh, no, I just had a little after party.
Little? Come on, Stipe, don't lie to us.
Yeah, it was a lot of people there. It was great. Hung out there for I only could be there for like 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we left, went to a smaller place that we knew the owner, and we just kind of hung out with family and the coaches and stuff.
So what was this small place like? Are we talking like a restaurant or was it a club?
Yeah, like a little restaurant bar. It was real nice. It was I was there. I left about 5:30, and my coach left about 6:30. We just hung out. I had like 2 or 3 glasses of wine and just hung out and just bullshitted.
Wow.
Well, 2 or 3 glasses of wine, because I was just about to ask you. Everybody's got their first celebratory meal, but, I was wondering what your special drink of choice is after you get the victory finish and the night is young. Are you telling me that you were just drinking wine that night? Maybe some cheese, a nice cheese board, some cured meat, perhaps?
No, not at all. Just a couple glasses of wine and just relax, man. Just just soaked it all in.
You're a classy champion. I don't think too many people drink wine on the UFC roster. So I like that you're sort of stepping it up. All right, we know you're already sick of people asking you who should fight next, and we know that you'll fight anyone the UFC wants, but at this stage, if we were matchmaking, I think the 2 potential fights would be between Cain Velasquez, potentially Jon Jones. Question is, what's more important to you, taking a big super fight with Jon or continuing to build your legacy at heavyweight against Cain?
Honestly, it doesn't bother me. Honestly, whoever they want me to fight, I'll fight. Listen, I'm a champ, and I'm not going to pick and choose who I fight. Who they want me to fight, I'm going to fight. So I really don't care.
Well, let's get this straight. If you were to fight Jon Jones, do you think it would be right for your title to be on the line? Because technically, Jon isn't a heavyweight, and he hasn't ever fought in the division before. So some people could see that as him sort of jumping over everyone and getting a title shot in an unfair fashion.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can look at it, So I'm not good at that stuff. Like, if I was a matchmaker, I wouldn't be fighting. So I'm just a fighter, and, they tell me I want to fight. So that's all I worry about.
You're obviously the man everybody's calling out now. Is it refreshing that, after having to call out guys for such a long time and claw your way to the title and really get your name out there, now you're the man that not only the heavyweight division wants, but also a big star like Jon Jones wants? What does that feel like?
Oh, it's cool. It means I'm doing something right.
Well, what was your reaction when you saw that Jon was interested in fighting you?
Oh, that's cool, man. It was a great fight, I think. I just, it shows that, I'm doing something right, and, people want to fight me.
Did it surprise you a little bit? Because, Jon's been talking about going to heavyweight for a long time now, and it never really seemed sort of certain. Obviously, him being a light heavyweight, you were a little bit surprised to see that call out, especially after you just, beat over him like that.
No, I mean, it is what it is, man. Honestly, I don't care. I just, I'm just living it up. I'm not, worry about fighting anyone for a while, so it's all good.
Well, we had Demetrius Johnson on the show last week, and I don't know if you know, but he's actually trying to catch up to Anderson Silva's title defense record. We're sure that's a goal for you as well at some point, but now with one title defense down, you've only got one more to tie the record and two more to beat it. Have you thought about that fact?
No, but all I care about is keeping that belt for a long time, so it's all I'm worried about.
You'll be going for that Anderson Silva, potentially Demetrius Johnson record.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, one fight at a time.
I'm always impressed with how grounded you are, Stipe. That knockout over Overeem, what kind of message do you think that a performance like that sends to the rest of the division and potential future challengers that step up and compete for your title?
Honestly, I don't know. It was just just happy to get the win and walk out of there with the belt. So that's all I wanted to do. That's what I was planning to do. I'm just happy and blessed that I got to do it and do it in my hometown, and and on to the next.
Yeah, I've been walking the streets, Stipe, and I feel like this victory has opened up a lot of people's eyes. Not only the fighters, but the fans, the media, the critics. Are you now starting to feel like you're getting the much-deserved respect that you probably deserved a while back?
I'm not worried about it, honestly. Listen, they can keep doubting me. They can keep me as the underdog. I'm going to keep proving you wrong. I like shutting people up.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing that for a long time now, and the interesting thing is the MMA heavyweight landscape hasn't had a truly dominant heavyweight who's, reigned supreme since Fedor Emelianenko. Do you think you could be that guy? Could you be this generation's Fedor, Stipe?
I know I could. I could be one of those guys that keeps it up for a long time, and I'm going to.
And Fedor is a very humble guy as well, so there's a lot of similarities there. Let me ask you this, though, because you want to take a break. Obviously, you're going on your honeymoon. You're going to be away for a number of months. News has just come out that it looks like Cain Velasquez and Fabricio Werdum will be fighting each other while you're away to determine who's going to be fighting for the title next. I don't know if you've heard of the news just yet because it broke quite recently, but what did you think of when you saw the news? Do you think it's a good move by the UFC while you're away to sort of determine who the next number one contender is?
I mean, I'm so bland. I mean, yeah, it's whatever they want to do. I mean, it's what they feel like, they want to do, whoever they want to matchmake with. I just, like I said, if I was a matchmaker, I wouldn't be fighting. So, it's whatever the UFC wants to do, and whoever they want to put in front of me, I'll fight.
It's an interesting matchup. Cain Velasquez, obviously a very, very dangerous fighter. And Fabricio Werdum, even though he looked a little bit flat in his last performance, we all know what he can do when he's in shape and in the right frame of mind. When you see these two guys matching up, in your mind, who do you think comes out as the winner in the matchup?
It's tough, because, Werdum got it last time, and, Cain's getting better, and he's an amazing fighter. And, I think just whoever implements the game plan. I think Werdum did that last time. That's why he won the fight. So it depends on what who does what they want to do in that fight.
Is it a part of you sort of hoping it's Cain because you've already beaten Werdum before, and I know it'll still be a great fight to see you versus Werdum number 2, but this Cain fight, I mean, a lot of people are very, very excited about it. I know it's more exciting to train for a new opponent. Does a part of you sort of wish that out of those two you get Cain next rather than Werdum?
Honestly, I don't care. I know. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. But yeah, like I said, it's whoever the UFC wants me to fight, man, I'll fight. If they want me to fight Cain, I'll fight Cain. If they want me to fight Werdum, I'll fight Werdum. I'm not, a picky fighter.
Yeah,
I signed up for a reason. Whatever they want me to fight, I'll fight.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people respect about you, Stipe, and they'll remember about you, in years to come, that he was a guy who, he didn't do a lot of trash talking, but he just kind of kept his head down. He went in there and he did the job, and who knows, maybe you'll have that massive record. Stipe, we appreciate the time. We're going to let you go in a second, but, obviously you won the title. You were at work on Tuesday, and you're at work right now. Are you're always grinding away in the gym? How ready are you to take this holiday? Because it seems like you've been flat out for the last few years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, now I'm excited to move in my house and just actually enjoy my life a little bit and not worry about fighting. I want to train and stuff, but not worry about a fight.
Is there a chance Stipe gets a taste of the golden beaches and the colorful fruity drinks and decides, why have I been working so hard? I'll get a job working as a surf instructor at the beach and enjoy the good life.
I think about it all the time, trust me.
We think about it all the time too. We can open up a surf thing at a beach.
Or the tiki bar, I'm in.
Yeah,
Awesome.
There'll be a tiki bar. There'll be a barn as well for entertainment. All right, quickly, last question, Stipe, we're out of your hair. We know that obviously you mentioned coming down to Australia. You've got family in Melbourne. We've got UFC Melbourne coming up in November. And are you and Ryan still planning on coming down under in the next few months or this year? And if so, is it likely you'll be coming down as a guest fighter to sort of, kill two birds with one stone?
I don't know. I kind of sit back and see what the UFC wants me to do and talk to them some more. And, we'll figure it all out here next week or so. So, you never know. It looks like it, maybe not. I just don't know what they want me to do.
Do you have any rough plans on when you'll be in Australia regardless, even if you don't come in November as a guest fighter? Have you sort of set a date when you might come down, do seminars or anything like that?
No, nothing yet.
Well, in the meantime and in between time, we'll be preparing a bedroom in our house for Stipe and Ryan, just in case they decide to come down. Stipe, I hope you liked scrambled eggs, because that's the only type we make in the Dennis household. Guys, make sure to follow Stipe on Twitter at Stipe Miocic UFC, and make sure to keep an eye for him and his wonderful wife, Ryan, in Australia at some point in the near future this year. Thanks so much, champ. It's such a pleasure having you on our 100th episode. How crazy is this? 100 episodes in, we start talking. Now you're the champ. We're 100 episodes in. We've had such a great run. I'm looking forward to having you on many more title defenses and many more episodes in the future.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day, all right?
And there he is, guys, the UFC World Heavyweight Champion. Who knows? Us and Stipe might even be getting into business together, doing some beach action. You guys may be doing shots potentially with us, but in all seriousness, hopefully we'll be seeing him back in the cage sooner than later. Of course, after a very, very well-deserved holiday with him and his beautiful wife. So there he is, guys. Now, moving on to some fun things. Before we get our next actual guest and interview on the show, this is Submission Radio episode 100. We got to do special things. We liken this episode kind of like to the Super Bowl. It only happens once a year. Actually, the Super Bowl happens once every year, and Submission Radio episode 100, well, there's only been one so far, so take that, Super Bowl. But just like the Super Bowl, they have a halftime show, a bit of a breather, some fun action, and we're no different, right? We decided to bring in a guest that we've had on the show on and off since the very early days of Submission Radio. I believe he was on our 3rd or 4th episode. He was kind enough to grace a couple of young, handsome, nubile gentlemen by the name of Casper and Dennis and appear on their show, and we brought him back here for episode 100 just to make things fun and special and something that you guys can enjoy, much like the high-profile celebrities like the Johnny Depps of age who receive awards but can't actually come down to the award shows because, let's be honest, they're busy doing, celebrity things. Tommy Tohart has pre-recorded a sexy message for us that we're going to cut to in just a second, basically talking about, fun things that Tommy Tohart does. So without further ado, great pleasure to welcome back Tommy Tohart to the show, or at least this message that he's made for us. Tommy, kick it away.
What's up, fight fans? I'm the No Man's Sky of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold. Today, I am not really joined by Nate, Connor, and GSP, and we're here for a round table of sorts to celebrate Submission Radio's 100th episode. Okay, so, and we'll just go around the table here. Describe Submission Radio in 3 words or less. Nate? Motherfucking ninja shit. Absolutely, absolutely. George? Aliens. That's it? You say 3 words or less, I just follow your instruction. Okay, how about they are aliens? Is that better? That's not better at all. That doesn't make any sense, George. That's because you refuse to see the truth, Tommy. Oh, jeez. Okay, Connor, 3 words or less, describe Submission Radio. Tree words. This motherfucker said tree words. Hey, this is America. We don't give a fuck about no trees. USA, motherfucker. What? Nate, the Submission Radio team isn't from America. Well, I bet they don't give a fuck about trees there either. Gentlemen, let's just calm down and be professionals. Tommy have invited us here to give our thoughts on Submission Radio's 100th episode. It is an amazing accomplishment. You might say that I am impressed by their performance. George, you gotta let that line go, man. You have to admit, Tommy, it was a pretty great line at the time. Matt Hughes, he did not know what to say. We're getting way off topic. God, I suck at interviews. See, this is why I'm never gonna get to be a co-host on Submission Radio. Connor, you're witty. Say something good about Submission Radio. Listen, game recognizes game. Nobody has podcasted what they have podcasted in the time that they have podcasted. 100 episodes in this game and they have already become kings. There are few dons in this radio game. Joe Rogan is a don. Casey Kasem is a don. You can add Submission Radio to that list. What these boys are doing is nothing short of fucking legendary. They deserve truckloads of cash. Okay, see, now that was great. George, give us something along those lines. Okay, I can do that. Submission Radio, 100 episodes. Wow. Impressed by your performance. I am. George, you just said what you said earlier, but you yoded it. Did you think that we wouldn't realize it was the same thing? I was in Captain America too. Nate, please salvage this train wreck. Hey, real quick, shout out to all my homies at Submission Radio holding this shit down to its maximum effect for 100 episodes, doing that real Australian ninja shit. Motherfuckers are my boys, Dennis, Casper, microphones for recording the sounds that are coming out their faces, chairs, pop filters, the internet for bringing them to my ears, Australia, the color yellow, submissions for giving their show a name, and Skype connections for making their guests sound super clear. Keeping audio quality 100, motherfuckers. Woo! There we go. Thanks for stopping by, Fake Connor, Nate, and George. And thank you for having me on your 100th episode, guys. Legit, you are one of the best shows in this entire sport. MMA is a better place with you guys in it. Cheers to 100 and many more to come. Let's do this shit!
Oh, man. Whoa, what a panel. Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, and GSP. I think I'm happy the GSP is impressed with us, but in all seriousness, Tommy Toehold, thank you so much. We'll be talking about Tommy Toehold at the end of the episode of what he means to the show, but that was absolutely hilarious. And guys, make sure to check out Tommy online at tripleths.com. That's his website. It's got all his goods. Follow him on Twitter at Tommy Toehold. He is hilarious. And make sure to check out his show. I mean, he is the best in the business on YouTube. That's /Tommy Toehold. Whoa. How can you follow that up? I don't think you can, but we got a man waiting on the line, Casper. He is known as the Predator, and I think he is going to bring some more party to Submission Radio. We've had him on many, many shows. He's on the line, and Cass, I believe he's ready to be introduced.
All right, guys. Our next guest is the UFC 8 tournament winner, the UFC Ultimate 1996 tournament winner, and now officially a UFC Hall of Famer. His career also extends to pro wrestling and Hollywood, and he is one of our favorite MMA analysts, Don Frye. Welcome back to the show. It's great to have you on our 100th episode.
Well, it's always great to have me, isn't it, man? Your women get all excited when they get calmed down. I'm coming on this shit.
Before we get into it, Don, we have to talk about something. Now, as you know, you come on the show quite a lot. We like to reach you via the phone. We SMS you. We didn't hear back from you, so we decided to give you a call. And to our surprise, another man picks up that is not Don Frye. He wasn't very happy. Turns out he's got your phone number now, and you've got a new number. All these people have been calling him. He actually tried to give me a bit of a grill session, finding out where you are. And he was actually sort of pissed off, and he wanted to know where he could find you. How about that?
Well, hell, I'm in between Arizona and California. Anytime he wants to, file a complaint, I'm game.
So what exactly happened? Any particular reason why you changed your number, Don?
Yeah, I'm going through a real nasty divorce right now. And so I thought I'd, advice of my attorney said to change my number and don't give it to her. But, she found out about it anyway. So it's kind of wasted time, But whole world just making the whole world mad at me right now.
Well, that's a bummer. I think no one is more mad right now than this poor guy that's getting a bunch of phone calls for Don Frye.
Yeah, you're not the only one that said this guy is unhappy about it.
Have you heard from him in any way? Did you know this? Did you know that there's a guy getting all sorts of phone calls for Don Frye?
Not until I talked to you all and somebody else, Then found out this poor guy's suffering.
I can just imagine some of the characters calling him at all different times throughout the night. Some legends from MMA and maybe the ex-wife and a bunch of other people.
No, the ex-wife doesn't call me, so that he'll never get that phone call.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Well, I mean, what else is new? We haven't spoken to you in a while. What else is new? What are you sort of doing to pass the time? And what are you doing when you're not ruining people's lives by changing your phone number?
Oh hell, I don't know. I'm sitting down here with a couple crazy guys from South Africa right now. Australia? Oh shit, you're from Australia? You're from South Africa? All right. Oh yeah, Arthur and Ben, and so we're talking about Last Fighter Standing. It's their TV show down there in South Africa, and we're looking at bringing it here in the States.
Well, awesome. That's exciting stuff. So this is a new thing that's happening, and just a little bit for the people that don't know about the project, Don. How would you be involved in it if it does come to America?
We're asked, am I allowed to say anything? Well, I would be one of the hosts, So, yeah. So I guess we'd go around and see. It's kind of like the old style UFCs where they have different style guys fighting, and it's a tournament fight where they fight 3 times in one day. So, it's like the old days.
I mean, I can't think of anyone more perfect to be hosting the show other than yourself, Don. You've got yourself, you've got the legendary mustache, a man who's won multiple UFC tournaments in the past. I mean, what do you think about that idea? What would this mean to you to be hosting a show like this?
I think it'd be a perfect idea. I think I'm the perfect host, like you said. I mean, who else is better for it than myself? I have all the knowledge and experience, and I can judge the ring card girls, and tell them if they're the perfect height and weight, and flexibility, and the important aspect of the show.
I mean, the fighters aside, I imagine there'd be a very rigorous screening process for obviously the ring card girls. What kind of process are we talking about, Don?
Well, flexibility, depth, what is it? Control where the gag reflex, Yeah.
Don't forget, they got to be able to hold those cards, and that can be difficult sometimes. Now,
that can be difficult, yeah. Holding your breath, yeah.
Let's go back to July when you got inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. We were there. We saw you up on stage, stealing the show, being honored by the people. What was it like for you to be back in the UFC atmosphere around fighters such as Dan Severn, Mark Coleman, and Antonio Nogueira?
It was great. It was real nice to be around those guys again. Like I said, I had having a real bad year, and with the divorce in the back and all that nonsense. Lost my horse last year and then broke my heart, and so it was nice to come out with some good feelings for once,
Yeah, I mean, fighters obviously say that the itch to compete never really goes away. Did you sort of feel it, and was it a bit stronger this time around when you were around there?
Yeah, it made you excited. It made you want to get back into it. And, if these guys don't hire me to be the host for their show, maybe I'll see if I can be one of the contestants.
Curious, did you get a chance to speak to Dana White or the Fertitta brothers at all, since they were obviously around the vicinity when this thing was going on?
I only saw one of the Fertitta brothers. I didn't see Dana or the other one. So I don't know what. Did you see them?
We saw them. We saw them the whole time Fight Week. I think I was actually sitting behind Lorenzo when you were up on stage during the whole thing. Did you speak to Lorenzo? What was that conversation like?
No, well, yeah, I'm a liar. Yeah, he came backstage and said hi, and real polite and real friendly. And I was surprised I didn't get shot. So, I was expecting a sniper off the roof somewhere.
Why would anybody from the UFC want to assassinate Don Frye? Come on now.
I don't know, but I loaned him my belts for that event, for the week-long thing, and I still haven't got my belts back, so I don't know. I don't know if they're laying a trap for me or what's going on.
Yeah, it was a sneaky way to take your belts off you. me and Casper were talking about it, and the Don Frye reality show on Fight Pass. Now, that's an idea that would draw a lot of viewers. Did you guys talk about anything like that, or any other way you can become a part of the Fight Pass platform now that it's out there and popular with a lot of legendary fighters taking advantage of it?
Well, you know, they said they're big fans of Predator's predictions, you know. So we're kind of talking about getting that involved. Now we're talking with Bellator about doing Predator's predictions for them. So, you know, whoever shows up with the money fastest,
wow,
they get the show.
I miss Predator's predictions, and to be honest, I'm not really worried about which fights you're predicting. As long as you're on it, I think people will be watching it. So it'd be great to see that for either Bellator or Fight Pass. I mean, when you were there for International Fight Week, it was of course the weekend of UFC 200. Did you get a chance to do much celebrating around that time? And were there any interesting stories or fan interactions, Don?
No, you know, like I said, I was going through that bad situation. So, you know, that's pretty much just, that kind of ruined my whole thing. It's like somebody jumping up and shit my birthday cake, you know.
Well, when we interviewed you after your induction, there was an interesting moment. Brock Lesnar obviously beat Mark Hunt in his UFC return, and when we asked you about Brock's performance and if he could be the champion down the road, you said it's going to be interesting to see how he gets past the drug test. Of course, he failed multiple drug tests. Why did you predict that he was going to have trouble with the test? Was it just the fact that obviously he's built like a massive beast, or did you have an inkling that it might be something else? Why did you expect for this to happen?
No, just look at the guy. The guy's, you know, it's phenomenal, physically phenomenal. You know, you know, it's just, you know, you don't get that way taking protein powder and lifting weights, you know. But, you know, hey, that's life in the big city. You know, you got to be willing to, you know, it's professional athletics, man, professional sports. You know, I'd rather that happen than watching some asshole who's getting paid $9 million a year sit on his helmet when they're playing the national anthem, you know?
Right, you're of course talking about the Colin Kaepernick situation, right?
Yeah, there's some football player, you know, for the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, they get $9 million a year, and he won't stand up for the national anthem, you know? So they need to kick that piece of trash out of the country. We're going to go play football in Mexico.
Well, you've always had an interesting firm stance when it came to steroids and MMA. What did you think of Brock coming back after 4 years and beating Mark while allegedly having a banned substance in his system? I mean, you mentioned that it's better than someone sitting out on the sidelines sitting down for the national anthem and getting $9 million in the NFL. But did a part of you get bothered by the fact that he tested positive?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. Of course, I wasn't fighting, but you know. Shit, back when I fought, you know, there's no rules, and you took it the way it was. You know, you sign your name, and you're a man about it. You didn't complain about it. You know, it's like I said, it's professional sports. You know, somebody's going to use them. Somebody's going to find a way to get an advantage. So that's just life in the big city, man.
I mean, one person obviously wasn't happy with that reality, and I think a lot of ways rightfully so, was Mark Hunt. He was obviously furious and blasted the UFC for letting this happen, and he demanded that he gets Brock's pay. What did you think of that fallout? What did you think about Mark Hunt wanting to get, you know, the pay, and even though Brock sort of went in there, beat him, collected his check, and now he's still working for the WWE with, you know, no repercussions?
You know what? I'm disappointed in Mark Hunt. You know, I mean, he knew what the game was when he practiced things, and to fight Lesnar, he knew what was up, you know. So for him to complain about afterwards, that's just disappointing.
I mean, that's certainly an interesting perspective. I'm curious then to hear your thoughts on Mark going out and looking to start a fighters association or a fighters union, and if you would see any value or if you would have any interest in potentially joining him and becoming a part of a fighters union or fighters association.
You know, I don't know, because I don't think most guys are smart enough or good enough to be part of a union. You know, you get a bunch of guys who might have 3 or 4 fights, and then start demanding a certain amount of pay. Well, you don't deserve that amount of pay until you reach say 10 fights. But most of these guys, they're not surviving for 10 fights. This is a rough sport. This is a fight, and most people that get in there, they have one fight, and they get the shit knocked out of them, and they're going home. They're packing their bag, they sit with their heads up. So why should they get equal pay for somebody who's been doing it for a few years?
Well, you mentioned someone doing it for 2 years and someone losing. Obviously, we got to get your thoughts on CM Punk making his MMA debut. By the way, did you know you made a brief cameo in the CM Punk documentary on Fox Sports?
No, I didn't know that. What happened?
Well, there you go. So basically, when we interviewed you, we've interviewed you many times over the years, and we've spoken about CM Punk when he originally sort of signed to make his debut. It was like 2 years ago. And that part actually made it literally the first thing when you watch the first episode of the CM Punk documentary. So you hear our silky voices and then your silky voice at the start of the first episode. How about that?
Really? How'd it go? Was I polite or was I a jerk?
Well, it depends who you ask. I think you were honest. That's the main thing.
Well, you essentially predicted the outcome almost exactly 2 years ago when you were on the program. Punk did lose. What were your thoughts on Punk's debut fight at UFC 203?
I didn't see it, but I got tip your hat to the guy. I mean, he took a shot. He had a goal, and he took a shot, and it wasn't successful, but he put everything on the line. He had a career in pro wrestling. He he stopped it all for a while. I mean, I don't think he lost anything. I mean, he only got paid $500,000, so he really didn't risk anything that aspect. But he took the chance, and win or lose, give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, do you sort of gain respect for the fact that he did go through it? Because I feel like 2 years ago when we asked you, you didn't necessarily believe that it was really going to happen, that he'd end up actually fighting. And of course, he did fight. It didn't go well for him, but do you gain respect for the fact that he did make that walk and get in the cage and really fight?
Yeah, most people wouldn't have done it. And, like I said, you got to tip your hat to the guy. He put it on the line. I mean, if he'd have done it for $10,000 or $20,000, well, then he'd deserve a lot more respect. A $500,000 cushion, then that's something easy to land on. When you fail. But hey, give it to him, man. He put it on the line.
I know you didn't see the fight, but I want to get your take because I think as, a former pro wrestler and someone from that world, you may sort of understand this. People are sort of up in arms about him getting $500,000 when there's a lot of fighters that have been training for decades who aren't getting the same amount. But on the other hand, he's a draw and he did boost the pay-per-view numbers significantly for UFC 203. Do you think he deserved that $500,000 despite his, lack of experience?
Sure, if you're going to bitch about it, get a better agent. Hire his agent. He's smart. He's got a good agent. If you don't have a good agent, that's your problem. What are you bitching?
Well, CM Punk says that he'll fight again. What do you think should be next for him? Should it even be in the UFC? And what advice would you have for him if he does have another fight?
From what I heard, Dana White said he needs to go somewhere else, right?
Well, Dana sort of said that, but nothing's official at this stage. What would you prefer? Do you think he should get another fight in the UFC?
Oh, you know what? I don't think he deserves it, but I mean, how many numbers? How did he boost the sales? Right? I mean, how'd that happen? How good did he do that?
Well, the final numbers aren't out, but there was an interesting tweet that said the $500,000 that he got, the UFC would have just needed an extra 15,000 pay-per-view buys to pay that off, and we're quite sure that he probably got a lot more viewers than that. It was an interesting card because Stipe was headlining it. It was in Cleveland, but they lost quite a lot of matchups on that card. There wasn't many draw cards. So in a lot of ways, if you sort of look at the embeddeds and all the stuff that he did online, he was probably the biggest pool for casual fans and looks like he increased the numbers at some level at least. When they come out, you'd expect that they'd be a lot more than what they paid him.
Right, he brought a bunch of fans, over from the from WWE. So maybe some of those fans might stay. So if the next couple numbers still stay up because of his fans, well then he earns it, right?
I definitely think he earns the $500,000 just because he did, sort of draw the crowd. Whether he stays in the UFC or not is a completely different story. We mentioned Stipe before. Obviously, heavyweight division, that's your terrain. That was definitely your terrain in the past. I know you didn't watch the fight, but what do you think about this run that Stipe Miocic is on at the moment? He just knocked out Alistair Overeem to defend his title.
I think it's pretty. How many fights is he in now since he's won the belt? 2 or 3 or what?
Well, this was his first defense. So he had the one fight where he won the belt against Werdum, and this is his first defense. So he's got 2 in a row. If he has another 2 wins, he's got the record in the UFC for most title defenses.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he may have a shot at it. Hell, he's Russian. He knows what hard work is. He knows what it's like to starve. That's the thing. That's where you used to get our good fighters in the boxing world. We're people from the ghetto or the barrio. People who when they tired of starving, and they had a reason to work hard and get out of the poor neighborhoods. Where now there's no reason. Now you just sit on your ass and get a welfare check from the government. So there's no initiative, no drive. So what they got to do? They got to quit handing out money for people to sit on their ass and get pregnant. And that'll give people initiative to work hard, and that'll bring the people back into fighting again.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is Stipe is actually from Cleveland, and I don't know about him coming from any kind of poverty background, but he is as hard a worker as it gets. He's actually closing in on one of your records. You own the record, Don Frye, in the UFC for most consecutive first-round finishes, and that's 5. He's got 3 at the moment. What do you think? He's sort of closing in on your record. Do you think he can beat it, or do you think the record's sort of safe for now?
Oh, I think it's safe. Well, I don't know. How's the competition there in the heavyweight division?
Ooh, he's
Is there anybody tough?
Possibly Cain Velasquez next. We'll be asking you maybe.
No.
There's another man in the works. Yeah.
No. Well, I guess I'm going to have to dust off the old shorts, aren't I? Make a comeback and then prevent that from happening.
Don Frye might be coming back in 2016. What a crazy time to be alive. I want to ask you, because you were sort of in the middle of all this, in Pride, and obviously when Fedor Emelianenko had his reign. Since Fedor, the MMA world has sort of been searching for that next dominant heavyweight to take over the throne. Looked like it might have been Cain at one point, but between his losses and injuries, the future is uncertain there. Do you think that Stipe could maybe be that guy and sort of rule the heavyweight division for a long time, Don?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, who's out there? How deep is the division? I mean, that's something you got to look at. What do they have? I mean, because you have nobody in the light heavyweight division. You had Jon Jones, and that was it. Then you had a bunch of muppets. And now that might be the same thing with the heavyweight division. You just have Stipe, and then you have nobody.
Well, the interesting situation is, and especially that you mentioned Jon Jones, I don't know if you saw the news, but Jon Jones is aiming for a potential matchup with Stipe. He mentioned it on Twitter. A lot of people are discussing it. What do you think about Jon Jones being interested in this fight with Stipe? It'd be a crazy matchup. The former light heavyweight champion stepping up in weight. Do you think he's biting off more than he can chew, or do you think Jones could do it?
No, I think Jones could do it. I mean, I knew he wouldn't be able to make weight, for very much longer anyways. I mean, he's 6'4". How long can you hang out at 205 pounds when you're that tall? And apparently he's been eating the same horse meat that Overeem has, so he's put on the weight.
Well, the interesting situation there is a lot of people trying to figure out if he does go in, is it just going to be a super fight, or will it be for the heavyweight belt? What do you think? Do you think Jones deserves the right to fight for the heavyweight title, even though he's never fought in heavyweight before and sort of skips the queue and jumps over everybody else that's ranked?
Sure he does. I mean, he was the light heavyweight champion. In boxing, they do it all the time. you bring a fighter up, a champion from one weight up to the next weight. And, Jones, I got to apologize to Jones because I was at 200 and I heard that he failed a drug test and, I heard it's for cocaine. So I badmouthed him, but apparently it wasn't, and then it was a false positive. So, I owe him a double apology, and, I jumped the gun. I should have sat back and been a professional and waited for the real results rather than the rumors, But I think Jones, it's easy for him to keep that weight. I mean, he probably walks around at 240 pounds anyways. So I think it'll be a good move for him because it'll be a lot more comfortable up there at that weight. And I don't know about his strength, but he's got the speed and the length and flexibility to do it. So the only question is the power.
Yeah, I mean, apology to Jon Jones. That's a huge one here. I'm sure Jones would appreciate himself. The power is not really something that Jones has ever been known for. Do you think that he's got enough skills though in other areas to potentially, topple a guy like Stipe and become, heavyweight champion?
Oh yeah, he's obviously enough skills. I mean, nothing in the heavyweight division. Nothing. Heavyweight division's power. So if you don't have the power, you don't have the ability to take the punch, you're wasting your time. You need to stay in the light heavyweight division.
Other big things happening on the radar right now is fans are excited for a potential return of George St-Pierre, maybe even later this year around December. Want to get your thoughts here. What do you think about GSP coming back? Are you excited to see him come back to the UFC?
I think it'd be great, yeah. Of course. I mean, he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. So it'd be fantastic to see him make a comeback. And, I think he could. I mean, because you talk about somebody who has all the talent in the world, I believe he could walk in there. I don't think the ring rust would be a big factor for somebody of his ability, his talent.
I'm wondering, with all these exciting matchups on the table, is there anyone potentially that you sort of would like to see him against?
What weight is he going to come in at anymore? Is he too heavy to make his original weight, or can he make that weight again?
No, he'll probably be fighting at welterweight. I mean, there was talks that he could potentially even make lightweight, and they might make, him versus Conor McGregor. But now it's looking a little bit more likely it's going to be him maybe versus Tyron Woodley for the title. What do you think about that? Is Tyron the one that you like, or would you prefer maybe this McGregor matchup, or is there anyone else that you'd want to see him fight in welterweight?
Oh, you'd love to watch fight McGregor. I mean, McGregor's so exciting. If McGregor can make a fight against a broom handle exciting. I mean, god dang. The guy can talk. And, Tyron Woodley's a hell of an athlete, though. I mean, anybody could do what he did, to the champion, Jeez Louise, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
You mentioned McGregor. What did you think of his fight at UFC 202 against Nate Diaz? I feel like that's a fight that you would have enjoyed.
I didn't see that one either. But, I didn't see the, yeah.
You're missing out, man. You got to watch that as soon as possible, and then let us know.
All right.
Yeah, what happens from now on is you message us when you watch a fight, so then we're like, okay, he's ready. Let's give him a call. But tell me this, Don, because there's a bit of a hoo-ha about this. Now, Conor McGregor, he's the champion at featherweight, but he hasn't defended his belt for quite some time. And with UFC 205 coming up, it looks like fans and the UFC and a lot of other people want to see him fight Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title. But there's a bit of a conundrum because he hasn't defended his title. A lot of people are complaining about the fact that he shouldn't be able to just fight for the lightweight belt and keep the featherweight belt. He should either vacate it or defend it. Where do you stand on that? Because a lot of people are unhappy because he's sort of holding up the division.
Well, who's complaining? The guys at that weight class or some idiot, who sitting on his ass in Cleveland?
You get a few people from you get the weight class, you get some purists, you actually have a few casual fans saying it. Where do you fall on this whole having to defend your belt if you're champion situation?
Well, sure he should defend his belt, but I mean the guy's money. He's walking money. He's magic for the UFC right now. He's the only one selling tickets for him. So he can do whatever the hell he wants.
All right, Don. Well, look, as we're sort of beginning to wrap up, let's sort of circle back to you. What else is happening in your life that's exciting? We know you had some TV shows. We know you were doing some movies. You know there's potentially this Last Fighter Standing. Anything else exciting that's coming up in the life of Don Frye that you want to sort of get out there?
Oh, no, nothing exciting. Just much bad news, so we'll just skip that one and we'll just leave that one alone, But, I'm looking for another horse, looking for another dog, looking for another woman, get shit, looking for a lot of stuff.
Well, hopefully you'll be able to find it. Now that you mentioned women, before we let you go, Don, some other big news coming out. Ronda Rousey, she's looking like she'll be making a return to the UFC later this year, maybe around UFC 207. Do you buy into it? Do you think she comes back? And if she does, do you think she'll be as dominant as she once was?
No, she's not coming back sooner or later.
A lot of people sort of saying, not sure whether or not she deserves to fight for the title straight away upon her return. You mentioned that McGregor's money. Ronda Rousey can draw a lot of money as well. Do you think she deserves this title shot straight away?
She used to be able to draw fans. Now she can't. Everybody's seen through her. If she wants to come back, she should do a rematch against Holly Holm. And then you beat Holly, then you can have a title match. But you don't deserve. You get your ass kicked like that, you don't deserve a title match.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think if Ronda came back, it'd be a big one, but you make a good case that if it was a return, a fight with Holly Holm would potentially make a lot of sense. Now, Don, you say you're looking for a lot of things, looking for women, horses, things like that. Hey, we've got a lot of them here in Australia, and I know you've been pretty keen to come down to Australia for a long time. For any promoters or anybody who runs seminars out there, why don't you give the people a bit of a preview? If you were to be brought down here, what does a typical Don Frye seminar look like? What can fans potentially expect?
Well, yeah, a lot of hard work, a lot of fun, a lot of laughing, a lot of sweats and a lot of knowledge. I'll ask you what you want, and if you're not smart enough to bring a question, then I'll just do what I want. I'll show you how to go for a quick kill.
I feel like you'd bring a wealth of knowledge that only, a legend like yourself and a guy who's competed on all the big stages will be able to bring. My question is, though, would you be giving out tips on growing mustaches? Because I think that's one of the main things that people would want to know.
Nobody can grow a mustache like me, baby. It's a gift between me and God.
The other thing that Australians probably love to do with you and should be a part of the seminar is the ability to go drinking with Don at the bar after the seminar finishes. If you came down to Australia, would you grab a few local brews with some of the Aussies down here? Do you think that could be one of the potential drawing cards of coming to a Don Frye seminar?
Well, that's a requirement. Huh? That's a requirement. You don't think I'm going to fly all the way to Australia and not drink a beer, do you? I'm going to go down there and drink a beer. Kill a crocodile.
That's a pay-per-view worthy event right there. I think the fans would love to sit around with Don Frye, hear some stories, and have some beers while they're at it. Don, it's always fun having you on a show, and you guys can make sure to follow Don Frye on Twitter at DonFryeFighter, and of course follow him on Facebook as well. A lot of fun updates there. Don, we'll let you get back to Ben and Arthur and talk about Last Fighter Standing. We hope that it does come through. We hope that you end up hosting it, and if not, it'd be just as fun seeing you as a competitor. So thank you so much for the time. We always appreciate it.
What's going on back there, Don? It seems like there's some commotion.
Are the sirens after you, Don, or someone else?
They're just announcing I'm in town. Congratulations on the anniversary, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Don. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
Alright guys, we couldn't do a 100th episode without getting this man on. You know him from the Wrestling Observer and MMA Fighting. He is none other than Dave Meltzer, and he joins us to give us his take on some crazy MMA news this week. Dave, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going?
It's going good. How are you guys? Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. We were going to say welcome to episode 100. We know you've seen some big milestones, UFC 100, WrestleMania 20. But does anything really compare to this moment right now, Dave? Submission Radio, episode 100.
Nothing today.
Well, in all seriousness, because I know there's probably a little bit less fireworks than WrestleMania. Thank you for joining us. It means a lot, Dave. We're just coming off, obviously, UFC 203 last weekend. We had the champ on just before, but we want to get your thoughts on the UFC, I guess, CM Punk experiment. What did you think of the way it ended up playing out, Dave?
I guess inevitable when you look at it with, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, I kind of figured when watching the build-up and seeing Mickey Gall and everything, I kind of thought it would probably to be sort of like what it was. His reactions were interesting. I can't say surprising, but interesting. It was, it was a guy he was bucking gigantic odds, and reality set in. Usually there's a reason odds are really long. Every now and then we see stuff where flukes happen or just surprises. And in this case, the fluke didn't happen and there was no surprise.
Which reactions did you find interesting, Dave?
I thought it was fascinating because I've seen Punk for so many years, and he always seems like, there's something about him. There's always a little bit of disgruntlement in him. I kind of hate to say it, but that's how my feeling is. And when he walked to the cage, he was so happy. And I was surprised seeing that look on his face because I thought his look on his face would be like a guy walking to an execution. But he was so happy to be there, and I found that fascinating.
The other thing is...
I think that...
Sorry, the other thing is just in the last couple of days, like at the weigh-ins, it almost seemed like he was trying to sell the fight. It seemed very, very pro wrestling. When he entered, he was playing to the crowd as well. Very pro wrestling. Did you find that interesting how throughout pretty much the whole 1.5 or so years, it was like there was no shred of pro wrestling, I guess, in him? He wasn't really trying to sell anything. He was just trying to be himself. And in the last 2 days, he really sort of turned it on. Did you find that interesting, Dave?
I just thought it was him being himself, and I think he's just been himself all the way through, honestly. If there's a little bit of pro wrestling, it's just because that's part of him. I think that he was definitely not trying to, he was trying not to make himself a circus, and I think he was really trying to, he knew he was like starting at the bottom, and he didn't want to insult the real fighters and the good fighters, and he always, he never claimed that he was a good fighter. He just claimed that he was going to work really, really hard for a long time, and I'm sure he did. He got in shape, and it was just a guy who was younger and had more experience fighting than he did, and that's I don't say like a UFC is a hard place to start. It's almost an impossible place to start unless you're a super athlete, and or like the only guys who, started in UFC practically that I can think of that were successful, BJ Penn, Lesnar actually had one fight elsewhere, but he kind of started in UFC, but you're talking about, Matt Riddle actually started in UFC, but these guys are a lot better athletes than Punk was. So it's a real hard thing, and a lot younger too.
Well, people complain about CM Punk's $500,000 paycheck. You're the man to go to when it comes to buy rates. From what you know, did Punk bring enough eyes to the product to warrant getting paid so much?
It was a bargain. They probably, realistically, he probably was worth, $5.5-6 million to the show.
Wow.
And that's not even that's just including that's pay-per-view. That's not even including like other ancillary things. And everyone on the show everyone that won on the show benefited because there were so many more people watching them. Stipe benefited financially because he was getting a cut of the pay-per-view. But even like Jessica Andrade or Werdum, not so much Werdum because I don't think he really helped himself that much in the fight, even though he won. But like Jessica Andrade, just as an example, it's like so many more people saw Jessica Andrade win, a good fight. And that helps her brand in trying to, get a championship fight because, there was probably, 170,000 paying customers that watched it that would not have been there without Punk.
I want to get your thoughts on that Werdum situation, but just before we do, obviously the big question is if he fights in the UFC again, CM Punk, is it right? Is it wrong? He's a huge draw, but obviously everybody saw the massive disparity in I guess, skills. Where do you stand on this, Dave?
That's a hard question. My gut my gut when it was over was that he shouldn't fight in UFC again. But I'm not running the company, And if I was running the company and a guy moved these kind of numbers, and the alternative is cut him and let him go to Bellator and move numbers for Bellator, I don't know if my decision would be the same. But as a fan and just, you know, and I like Punk, but the reality is my gut would say, you know, it'd be hard to book him in UFC again. But I do think that if he was to fight in UFC again on a free television show, I think that the ratings would be really, really high, because there's a lot of people who didn't watch this, and there would still be the curiosity. He's still a star. I mean, a lot of people think, well, he did this, it didn't draw. I mean, it drew, but I mean, he looked bad, and it would never work again. But I've seen too many people who, you know, I mean, Kimbo Slice just as an example. I mean, we saw him, you know, lose fight after fight and not look good, and every time the guy came out, because he was a celebrity, people always watched. And I think with Punk, if he's on television, I think people will watch. Now, is that, you know, UFC cut Kimbo Slice too? So is that an excuse to keep him? You know, my gut says that they won't keep him, but you know, I mean, there's an economic justification to keep him.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Dave, because the fact that if they don't keep him, he might go over to Bellator, and Bellator might do big things with him, because I suppose Scott Coker is in the mindset of knowing how to make these things work. We see what he's done with Kimbo Slice, Ken Shamrock, as you mentioned. And you say that they might not keep him and that might not influence their decision. But do you think if Dana White does look back at what Scott's done with Kimbo, Ken, Hoist, Tito, it might get that one more fight for CM Punk in the UFC, at least just not to see him go over to Bellator?
Yes, I do believe there's a possibility. I mean, if there was no Bellator for him to walk into and draw big numbers for, and there was no competition, I think that they would for sure just go, hey, look, you know, but the fact is that if they do cut him, they are sending him right to the opposition, where he will do numbers for the opposition. So that has to be part of them. You know, it's something to consider. Yeah.
All right, you mentioned it before, the interesting Werdum situation. What did you think of that fight? I guess more specifically the very end, with obviously Edmund Tarverding getting in the cage, getting angry, Werdum keep kicking. What did you make of all that? That was very pro wrestling. That
was a weird fight because obviously the fight should have been stopped in the first round.
Yeah.
And then I thought that Werdum and Brown, Brown was hurt, and I thought Werdum looked slow. I mean, he clearly won the fight, but I don't think he looked very good. And then I'm sure Edmund must have said something, because Verdum's a pretty cool guy, and he's not kicking somebody for no reason. But even so, him kicking the guy was crazy, because it's just like, sometimes people swear at you in that heated situation. Somebody should have probably pulled Edmund away, and I'm not defending Edmund one bit for if that's what he did. But I'm still shocked that you would kick the guy. But I guess if he thought that the guy was going to throw a punch first, maybe that is your natural reaction. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a crazy situation. It was just a crazy card in general. Weird feel to this one. But let's jump over to another pay-per-view draw who made headlines this week when we found out that he was Bellator bound. Chael Sonnen is now one of Scott Coker's latest additions to the promotion, and there is money to be made, Dave. Were you surprised by the news, and why exactly do you think Sonnen ultimately jumped ship?
Sonnen's talked, and he actually hasn't given a really great answer. I'm just guessing that Bellator probably made the better offer to him. I was surprised. I thought it was a given that he was going to come back to UFC if he came back. Once he put his name in the testing pool, it was kind of like, okay, he really is going to come back, because if the whole time he was gone, and he said, I'm sure he said it to you guys, and he said it to me. He never said, I'm never coming back for sure ever, but he did say he wasn't planning on coming back, but he always left wiggle room.
Yeah.
And I always sort of thought, okay, even if he believes he's not coming back, he probably will, and it probably would be in UFC. So the Bellator thing, I didn't really hear any hints of the Bellator thing until it broke. So I was surprised about that. Yeah.
I think it surprised everybody. Everybody just pictured, Chael Sonnen, when inevitably he returns, is going to be in the UFC. So this is an interesting one. Looking at the fights, they can do Sonnen versus Ortiz, they can do Sonnen Vanderlei, maybe even Sonnen Fedor if things get sorted out. What do you think is the right debut fight for Sonnen, if you sort of thought about it?
I think the Tito one makes the most sense for right now. It's because Tito's only going to fight one more time anyway, and I don't really know who else. Tito's at least going to fight someone who will really promote the fight hard, and it will be an interesting fight. And it's not like it's this mismatch, one-sided fight. It's like I could see either guy winning. Tito really is the bigger natural guy. Because Tito's a big 205. And Chael's a 185 pounder who can go to 205, and he's not tiny at 205, but he's not big. Tito's a year older, maybe. So I don't know. I mean, I find it like it's a good farewell fight for Tito. It's a good first fight for Chael. It's a marquee fight. So I like that as the first one. I mean, Fedor's not going to be in that quick if he ever is in. So and then I know they talked about Rory, but I think that to me Rory really should fight at 170 at least first. And as far as the other 205ers, I know he mentioned there's King Mo, there's Liam McGeary, Phil Davis. I think that of those fights, Tito's a better first one for him than any of them.
It's interesting because we see the negotiations with the GSP and the UFC going back and forth, and there's the contention around the whole sponsorship issue. And a guy like Chael Sonnen, I mean, he'd be making a killing on sponsorship money. It's on his way back possibly to the UFC, and then there's this whole Reebok issue. Do you think that sometimes this is a bit of a detractor for the UFC when they are negotiating with these big-name guys who used to make a lot of money through sponsorship, and then you got Bellator who allow you to make money through sponsorship, with us, making a lot more on top of your show and your pay money?
Well, I mean, the one thing is that if the offers are pretty close, Bellator's the better offer. Because if you're a star and you can, not everyone can, not everyone's going to make big money on sponsorship. But Chael, I mean, the one thing with a star in Bellator, if there's all these companies that may want to sponsor somebody. I mean, there's not like there's a ton, but there are companies out there that are frozen out of UFC, and they're not going to necessarily sponsor mid-level Bellator guys, but if it's a Tito Ortiz or a Chael Sonnen or a Benson Henderson or somebody like that, I think that I'm thinking those would be the guys that you would kind of gravitate towards, especially Chael, because Chael's going to get you exposure. I mean, if nothing else, So yeah, if it's close, I mean, I thought like when UFC went with Reebok, I thought that was a benefit for Bellator in the sense that number one, whatever sponsors are out there that want to sponsor fighters, they're going to have to sponsor Bellator fighters. And the other one is just for guys, people themselves that want to market themselves or their own brands. Like a Uriah Faber or Tito Ortiz. Where you have your own brand. It's like now in UFC you can't even market your own brand. So but in Bellator you can. So it's like I mean that is an advantage for the Bellator side. Plus every fight's on television on a Friday night, or Saturday night, and it's a guarantee a certain amount of an audience. Like with UFC, you could fight on Fight Pass, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not going to get the eyeballs of a Bellator Friday or Saturday night show.
Yeah, I mean, and Chael loves drinking Coke after Wayne's. He had that Coke sponsorship. I wonder if he'd actually be able to do that in the UFC, or if it's only like restricted to Reebok water or Reebok flavored drinks. Speaking of big fights this weekend, we also found out that GSP Woodley at 206 will not be happening, with obviously the champ taking on Stephen Thompson at UFC 205. Fight should be amazing, but where does that leave GSP in your mind, Dave? And are you still expecting him to be on 206? And if so, why did the UFC change their mind and do Woodley and Thompson instead?
Yeah, everything about the GSP thing, I don't understand. I mean, to me, it's like if GSP wants to fight Tyron Woodley and Tyron Woodley wants to fight GSP, and the fans would want to see that fight more than any other welterweight fight. I mean, and again, Wonder Boy deserves a title shot. So I mean, I'm not complaining about Wonder Boy getting a shot, but I don't understand why. It just the GSP fight's such a big fight, and I don't know why. It's weird to me that Dana White keeps saying that GSP doesn't want to fight. GSP keeps insisting he wants to fight. I'm sure it's all public negotiations because GSP is probably asking for a lot, but GSP will draw a lot, and it's like I'm sure GSP is not asking for more than he's going to draw. I don't think so. I don't understand it. Plus, other thing with GSP is like the Canadian market was huge for MMA, and then when GSP retired, it went way, way down. And I know it's there because when the UFC 200 prelims did a monster number in Canada. I mean, it was just ridiculous how big it was. And so I know that the audience is there, but they're not loyal to it right now because they don't have, there's no superstar. Well, GSP coming back, you couldn't get bigger. The guy was voted by the, Canadian sports fans as their athlete of the year 3 times in a row. I mean, so it's like he'll bring back, if he can win the championship, he will bring back the glory days of MMA in Canada, like at the snap of a finger. And if he doesn't win the championship, that's just how fighting goes. But I mean, I deserves the chance. I mean, he was the best welterweight in the history of the business, and he never lost the championship. And he's not that old. I mean, it's like, and we don't. I mean, he's a fantastic athlete. If anyone can come back, I mean, walking in after 3 years and going for a championship, that's kind of a tough one for anyone. But if anyone can do it, he would be the guy, right?
Well, there's a lot of rumors about Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva 3, and now Chael Sonnen's gone over to Bellator. Do you think that sort of frees up Anderson Silva to do this fight with GSP at UFC 206?
I guess you could do it if GSP wants to. I mean, I think at this point now,
Is it Nick Diaz that you give him?
What?
Is it Nick Diaz that you give him?
You could go with Nick Diaz. In some ways, Nick Diaz would be a better fight for GSP because he's going against someone who also hasn't fought in a long time. So you're kind of looking at, you know what I mean? Rather than go for the championship in your first fight. So I mean, yeah, if GSP and Nick Diaz. It's a money fight. I just think that, George really did beat Nick Diaz pretty handily the last time, but it's a lot of years later, and it's so the buildup will be excellent. So I mean, I guess that's a good fight.
Yeah, I think people have forgotten about the result, and I think two massive comebacks. People will be excited. While we're talking about UFC,
GSP's comeback against anyone of a decent level is going to be huge, I think.
I mean, well, here you've got two comebacks, Nick's and GSP's. I think it'd be massive. But
right.
While we're sort of talking about UFC 205, as with UFC 200, there's a lot of hype for this card. And although the confirmed matchups are awesome, card's still a major, far from a major spectacle. Do you think McGregor-Alvarez is still going to come together for the main event? Does UFC 205 need a McGregor on it to make it as big a deal as the UFC wants?
Yes, I think McGregor has to be. McGregor or St-Pierre have to be on the show, and I don't think it's going to be St-Pierre. So, yeah, because it's that or Rousey, because Jon Jones is out of the picture, and even if Jon Jones is in the picture, I see McGregor as a much bigger deal than Jon Jones. McGregor coming to New York for the first time would be huge. I know that they really want to do a record gate in the Garden, and I don't think that Woodley and Wonderboy as the number 2 fight, especially if you have Weidman and Romero there, and you have and you go up with McGregor on top. I think that's a pretty damn strong card. But without a McGregor on top, and if you just went with Woodley and with Weidman's fights as like the big 2, I don't think that's. I mean, they'll sell out Madison Square Garden or they'll do very well in maybe they will sell it out. But to me, it's not a monster show. With those two as the top 2 matches.
Obviously, we were at UFC 202 and were shocked by just how massive the numbers ended up being for that card. So definitely,
I was shocked too.
It was ridiculous. How likely do you think it is, though, of happening, of them putting together McGregor-Alvarez? Because there's been rumors for a while. The other rumors are that the issue, that the speed bump here is that McGregor doesn't want to drop the title. They want him to drop the title. What are you hearing, Dave? Is that true? And do you think we'll end up with that fight on the card?
I mean, it makes sense, especially with Alvarez being, from Philadelphia, which is close enough. So it's not quite local, but it's almost local. I still think that it should be. My thought is it should be up to McGregor, and if McGregor wants to fight and he wants to retain his championship, then he should fight Aldo. I mean, Aldo deserves it. Aldo had a great win over Frankie Edgar, so to me, it's like he absolutely deserves another shot. He only lost once in whatever it is, 10 years. Fantastic. I mean, I think Aldo's one of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. Everyone loses once. You can't throw a guy away. GSP lost once, then came back and beat everyone, forever, right?
Yeah.
So I think Aldo absolutely deserves it. If McGregor can't get to that weight, then yeah, he has to vacate the title. And at that point, if he's not going to fight at 145, you go to 155, and Alvarez is the guy. So either one. I mean, I don't think that I have no preference one or the other. I think it should be McGregor's call, whichever one. I mean, if he can make 145 and he wants to retain the title, then he should fight the interim champion.
Well, it seems like the new UFC, it seems like UFC 207 has almost become like the new UFC 205, with people hyped for the card after DC and Jones, Werdum, Velasquez, and possibly a Ronda Rousey return have been rumored for the card. If Ronda does return on the card, Dave, I'm just curious, who do you give her?
I mean, a lot of it depends on her mentality. Even given who the champion is, if I was going to pick one, I would pick Holly Holm. I think that's the money fight. It's really too bad Holly Holm lost twice, but it's still the money fight. Holly Holm's got a huge name and beat Ronda, and but if Ronda wants to fight for the championship against Amanda Nunes, it's not as big a fight, but it is a championship fight, and I would think that if she wants that, you could have that. But to me, those are the two alternatives.
Yeah, I like this Holly Holm fight. Finally, Dave, before we let you go, what do you think about this Jones Miocic super fight? I mean, it's just kind of floating around in space, but hey, fans are excited. Stipe's open to it, but is that the right move for Jones? And if he gets it, should it be for the title?
Yeah, I mean, it's just all the issues with Jon have to be cleared up.
Right. Yeah.
If they are cleared up, I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, I know people. I would still go with Cain and Miocic first, and then Jon Jones against the winner. I just feel that Cain looked so spectacular, and for him to be, he looked spectacular, and Jon Jones, failed a drug test. So I feel that, even though Jon is a bigger draw than Cain, it isn't so much that and plus Jon's never fought in that weight class. I think that Cain deserves the championship fight. But if Jon, I think Jon Jones and Cain Velasquez is a fantastic story fight, just because of everything that happened. So, and if he wants to move to heavyweight, and everything, no one's beat him. So I don't have a problem with him getting the shot, especially at a winner of Miocic and Velasquez. Now it looks like that Velasquez is going to fight Werdum. At that point, like if Werdum wins, then Werdum obviously deserves the shot at Miocic, either way. So I mean, the winner of that fight, to me, deserves the championship fight. Jon, just, I think that, at that point, maybe you put Jon against another heavyweight and see if he can beat at least one heavyweight before he gets the shot. Or, the reality is that Jon should fight the Cormier Rumble winner. I mean, to me, that's the fight that should happen. I mean, that's his weight class. He's never been beat in that weight class before, he goes up to heavyweight.
Yeah. Or do you think there's a possibility that it should just be a super fight, no title on the line, but you have the guy that's the best in light heavyweight versus the guy that's the best in heavyweight, and you just make a big spectacle out of it? Because who knows? He's always talked about the fact that he's wanted to fight the lower weight heavyweight guys, but then if he becomes heavyweight champion, he'll have to go up against the big heavyweights eventually as well, you'd think.
Well, he's such a great fighter. I don't see anyone running through him, I mean, as far as not being competitive with him. I mean, maybe, I don't know. You never know how a guy's going to deal with bigger guys. All I know is that DC did awfully well at heavyweight, and at light heavyweight, I mean, he's doing well at light heavyweight, but he didn't beat Jon Jones. So, I think Jon Jones is the most talented fighter that I've ever seen in this sport. So, and he's got the reach, and he's got the frame to where, he could be a 230-pound guy and not be fat or anything. So, now, would he have the stamina that he had and the speed he had at light heavyweight? Probably not. But look at DC. I mean, DC was awfully good against those heavyweights, and he shouldn't carry as much weight as Jon Jones. And he did real well. I mean, nobody ever beat him at heavyweight. So, I've got to think Jon Jones could again, there's no, I think Cain and Miocic are really good heavyweights. And aside from that, I mean, Werdum's excellent, but he's old, so you don't know, and at that age, you don't know what the guy's got left. And I think the other heavyweights, while they're good, they're not like super spectacular, Jon Jones level fighters.
I mean, this is all obviously hypothetical, and we haven't really heard any new developments. But how soon do you think Jon Jones could be back in the UFC? I'm wondering if you've heard anything, Dave.
Nothing that you guys would know. I mean, I think that the hearing in Nevada is going to be real interesting, because if nothing else, we're going to find out what his excuse defense is and how valid it is. And Nevada's probably going to if Nevada makes a ruling, then and I think that's supposed to be October 10th. Then we're going to know. If it sounds like, I mean, 1 year. If it's 1 year from the test failure, I mean, that's July. It was late June, so that's we don't really need to. If it's a 1 year suspension, thoughts about Jon Jones, we really shouldn't think about Jon Jones for a while. It won't be any longer than a year from USADA, but who knows how Nevada's going to react. I mean, Nevada's taking some hard lines right now, and especially because it was a fight in Nevada and the nature of how it all went down. I wonder, but if he's got, look, it is possible he has a legitimate reason. I mean, I don't want to I don't believe. It'll be hard for me to believe it because everyone has an excuse, and usually they're not they're BS excuses. But some of the excuses, there are guys who fail drug tests that do have legitimate excuses, and if he's got that, then to me, to me, I guess it should be a 1-year deal or it should be nothing. If he didn't do anything wrong, then he should be scot-free. But if he did do something wrong, it should be the 1 year, and then we don't need to worry about Jon Jones. There's no point in worrying about Jon Jones till the spring anyway. At that point.
Mm-mm. Well, there you guys have it. So much exciting stuff going on. You got to make sure to follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Meltzer, WON, and check out the Wrestling Observer for all the latest stories from the world of MMA and pro wrestling. Dave, thank you so much for gracing us on Submission Rate episode 100, and it's been a pleasure having you on all the other episodes leading into this one, man. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a bunch, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys, joining us here on Submission Radio, episode 100, is the newfound friend. You guys know him from the previous episodes, Adam Hill, who is the head MMA writer for Nevada's largest newspaper, the Review Journal. He covers MMA. You could recognize him from Countdowns. His work is amazing with the amazing Heidi Fang. You can also recognize him from Cofield and Co. and ESPN 1100. He joins us back here to discuss some of the action from UFC Fight Night 94. Adam, welcome to Submission Radio episode 100. Good to have you, man.
Oh, good to be here, and congratulations to you guys. It's an honor to be here for such an enormous event like the 100th show.
Yeah, well, Dave Meltzer was on the program just before. We spoke to him about the fact that he's been at UFC 100, WrestleMania 20, and how much of a huge event is this Submission Radio 100. And he told us, Adam, I will tell you right now, he told us it was the biggest event that he was a part of that day. So we're up there in the Dave Meltzer rankings.
Sure. I wouldn't say that it was bigger. It was bigger than UFC 200, but that's only because Jon Jones fell off. If Jon Jones would have stayed on the card, UFC 200 would have been bigger. I think you guys are right there, though.
Okay, well, that was harsh but fair. Now, let's get into the card. For people that didn't watch the card, there was a bit of action from UFC Fight Night 94, a bunch of fights happening, but we will be focusing on the two main fights of the evening, and there's a bit to talk about here. Derek Brunson versus Uriah Hall in the middleweight showdown. This was an interesting one, guys. I want to go around, get your thoughts on who you thought was going to win this fight before we actually talk about the actual fight, because a lot of people felt like Uriah Hall looked very confident going into this one mentally, and he looked confident going into this fight. A lot of people felt like things were going to turn around for him here, but Derek Brunson is a dangerous, dangerous man. I personally thought Brunson was going to do it, but Adam, I want to get your thoughts. Did you agree? Did you think Brunson was going to win this one, or did you think Hall was going to take this one out?
Yeah, I actually had a great night picking fights, so it doesn't happen very often, so I guess I can brag about it when it does. I definitely thought Brunson. I thought Brunson was a great pick. I was surprised he was as big of a favorite as he was. It kind of creeped up a little bit, but I thought Brunson was the right favorite, and I thought he was definitely a good play here. I don't think people quite realize how good of a run Derek Brunson has been on. This guy, we know him as a great wrestler, and I think a lot of people thought he'd go in and just try to wrestle and take Uriah Hall down and wear him out and stay away from his dynamic striking, but. Brunson, that's his fourth straight first-round knockout. You can question whether it was or not, but, he's been on a really good run with his hands. He's been knocking people out, and he's got that wrestling to fall back on as well. This guy is a really solid force that I don't think, I think now, after that, I think people are going to start to say, wow, he is on a good run, but I think he's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, and he's had a lot of success in that division.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping this is the fight that really makes people wake up. I think people have slowly started to wake up about Derek Brunson. I personally had him winning the fight any way he wanted, and that's no slide on Uriah Hall. You're right, Dennis. He definitely looked very, sound of mind, this one. But yeah, just with Brunson's wrestling, and I mean, still going back a few years ago when Uriah Hall ultimately lost the Ultimate Fighter against Kelvin Gastelum and just got out-wrestled, and, Kelvin Gastelum was able to put everything together. I saw a very similar situation, and I didn't rule out the possibility of Brunson knocking out Uriah Hall. And, it didn't really surprise me much at all.
Well, how about this? I'm on Wikipedia right now, having a look at the results as we're talking about it, and some Wikipedia bandits have changed the fight to Herb Dean defeating Uriah Hall versus via TKO. How about that? Those Wikipedia bandits striking all over this card throughout the night, putting up crazy things on there. But you mentioned it before, Adam, whether or not this was a KO win. A lot of people debating whether Herb Dean stopped this a little bit early. Want to get your thoughts. Did you think this was an early stoppage by Herb Dean?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I thought in full speed, in real time, I thought it looked fine. Then you watch the replay in slow motion, and certainly it appeared that Brunson missed with most of those follow-up shots. But at the same time, Hall was laying on his side, not really moving and not really doing much to defend. So I don't know that he was taking, the brunt of those shots. But you can't make it look like you're just laying there and taking punches. It's going to get stopped. So I'd rather refs err on the side of caution. I think you can certainly make the argument that fight should have been allowed to keep going a little bit. But what we get on referees so much when they take too long, they're not going to be perfect every time, and you have to give them a reason to let the fight keep going. And Uriah Hall really didn't in that case. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to want perfection and nitpick everything, yeah, you say maybe it was a little early, but I didn't have a huge problem with it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people are focusing on the fact that none of those punches hit, but you're right. Uriah Hall didn't really do anything to give Herb Dean a reason to sort of, let him continue fighting. And then there was the fact that he did grab Herb Dean's leg afterwards, and then when he stood up, even though he popped up, he stumbled. And obviously we don't have any crystal balls. We don't know whether, Derek Brunson would have capitalized and kept on giving a punishment. But, I think it even speaks almost more so the fact that when you have a few seconds to recover and you're not taking punches and you don't really do anything, I think it was a pretty good stoppage. I'm with you as well, man. Like, maybe Herb Dean could have let it go another second or so, but it definitely wasn't any kind of robbery. And I think the hate on Herb Dean is purely unfair. I think we got to recognize it for what it is, which is a great win for Derek Brunson. Kind of reminds me, actually, of the win that Chris Weidman had over Uriah Hall with another big left.
Yeah, it's the thing with Herb Dean. When he goes down in history, he'll definitely be on the side where people felt like maybe he stopped a few fights early. But I think it's better to be a referee where maybe people think he might stop a couple of fights early than being the referee that stops fights too late. So he's definitely saved a lot of guys from getting a lot of extra punches to their head. And an unfortunate situation for Uriah Hall, but a great win for Derek Brunson. And look, we'll talk about what's next for Derek Brunson a little bit later because I want to talk about Robert Whittaker and your guys' thoughts on what's happening next. Let's quickly jump to the main event and just talk about that. Michael Johnson versus Dustin Poirier. There's a bit of a beef there between camps. American Top Team and the Black Zillions. Both guys had a lot of tension before the fight. The weigh-ins were pretty interesting to look at. And going into this fight, I actually thought Dustin Poirier might get this one done. Michael Johnson didn't look that great in his last fight against Nate Diaz. Adam, what did you think of the fight and the way that Michael Johnson was able to stop Dustin?
Yeah, again, I picked Michael Johnson in this fight. I thought that, you look at the way he was going. When he was on that 4-fight winning streak, it looked like he was really ready to take that next step. We know that he's had all the talent in the world. He's really fast. He's got power. It seemed like he was putting it all together, and then he lost 2 fights in a row. But if you really look at it closer, he had the Darius fight last year, which I still think he won. Got kind of robbed in that decision, and then he fights Nate Diaz. And Johnson, I talked to Michael Johnson on the phone from down in Texas this week, and he told me he's like, yeah, listen, I underestimated him. I didn't think Nate Diaz was going to come out that strong. I made a mistake. I screwed myself. And that's what happened. And I believed him because going into that fight, I remember I thought Michael Johnson was going to easily take care of Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, we know him now as this superstar that fought Conor McGregor twice and made all this money and kind of changed, the dynamic of his career. But if you think back to going into that fight, he was a very inconsistent fighter who had flashes of greatness and never really, was consistent over time. And he comes into that fight and looks great. And Michael Johnson suffers his second straight loss. So it was a 2-fight losing streak, but it wasn't like these egregious losses. I still think Johnson is ultra talented. And on the other side, you have Dustin Poirier coming in on a 4-fight winning streak since he's come up to lightweight. He's another guy who's incredible talent, incredible athleticism. He's got power. He's a dynamic submission guy. He can knock people out on the feet. He can do everything. But these 4 fights in a row they've been good performances, but it hasn't been against top competition. I thought Johnson is a potentially a top guy. In lightweight, he said that he had surgery on his shoulder. He's finally healthy. He said he didn't know that he was hurt. He didn't know how much it was affecting him. And then all of a sudden he gets the surgery and he's like, oh, I've got this huge power again in my shoulders that I didn't know I was missing. So I think it was a different Michael Johnson. I think it's a guy who is ready to take that next step despite those 2 losses, and I think that he's a legitimate contender. Even though he's now lost 2 of his last 3, I don't think he's that far back in what is a crowded lightweight division. I think he's legit.
Well, Casper, what do you think? I mean, big win in this headline fight. A lot of people paying attention to the fact that these guys are headlining. He's 30 years old. He's still young, and he's got a lot of potential. Do you think this win puts him back on the map? And he mentioned that he wanted to be at UFC 205. Do you want to see a quick turnaround for him? Do you want to see him capitalize on this momentum and get a quick fight to follow up with this momentum?
Well, I'm hoping that we'll be at UFC 205. So if he can be there and put on a great performance, and I'll tell you who I think he should fight in a second. But yeah, I'd love that. I think that's what he needs. He's been talking a lot about financial issues, and part of me was always wondering, if he gets the pink slip, maybe this could be good for him because Bellator might give him an offer that the UFC just wouldn't be able to match. So financially, it might work out. But alas, here he is. He wins. I think he looked a lot faster, just a lot sharper, a lot crisper. I did think Dustin Poirier was going to win. I thought that even though Michael Johnson is a lot more technical fighter on the feet, Dustin Poirier just has too many tools. I was completely wrong, and what a stage to do it on. In the main event, a huge upset. I think it definitely puts him back on the map. I think also, like what you said, Adam, the lightweight division, you almost have to give people a bit of leeway when they suffer consecutive losses because it really is that crowded of a division. I think even if you lose to a couple of guys, I mean, you look at Nate Diaz, he's on the hottest streak of his career, and Dariush, I mean, that was a fight that could have gone either way. I think what's next for him, unfortunately, because the top is crowded and a lot of the fighters already taken up, I think he should face Michael Chiesa. He's another guy, exciting guy, was meant to fight Tony Ferguson not too long ago. He's got a lot of momentum behind him, and I think Michael Johnson and Chiesa is the fight to make.
There you guys go. I believe Anthony Pettis called out a few people on Twitter. One of those people was Michael Johnson, I believe, for New York. Possibly another great fight there, but yeah, I mean, you'd think that whatever's next is going to be an exciting moment for Michael Johnson. Pay me, baby, what's up, as he said in the post-fight interview. But we were talking about Derek Brunson before, gentlemen, and as people know, UFC Melbourne has been announced. It's going to be Rockhold versus Jacare. A lot of people are wondering what's next for Robert Whittaker, who is one of the biggest stars here from Australia. People surprised that he's not headlining this card. I'm going to kick it off real quick and talk about what should be next for Brunson, or what could be next for Brunson. A lot of people mentioning the fact that he, with a quick win like this and coming out looking like he's unharmed, he can have a quick turnaround in Melbourne, possibly fight Robert Whittaker next. I'd like that fight. I think that would be good. I prefer that fight over Talis latest matchup, to be honest with you guys. But Casper, who do you think Robert Whittaker should fight if the UFC put him on this UFC Melbourne card?
Yeah, so just quickly, a lot of people are saying Robert Whittaker should have been main eventing this fight night here in Melbourne. Look, I get it. He's an Aussie. We love him, obviously, but he's not a big name. He's not a big draw. He's sort of a work in progress. And the UFC, they're trying to sort of build him up and I think get him more of a following by putting him on international cards. So to be honest with you, I wouldn't be that upset if he's not even on this Melbourne card. Not that I don't want to see him. I just think he needs more exposure. As far as him versus Derek Brunson, I think that's a really, really tough matchup. I think, when you got two potential contenders, a young guy like Robert Whittaker, a young guy like Derek Brunson, I think steer them clear of each other. Let them have their own paths to sort of potentially a title shot or build them up. I would rather see Robert Whittaker face a guy like Talis Laitis, because in his last fight, he went up against Rafael Natal. It was a good victory, but it wasn't an absolute destruction. I think he's still, a work in progress. He's still, working on his skills. He's coming off an injury. I think Talis Laitis, if you do want to build up a guy like Robert Whittaker, who really is, one of the biggest sort of hopes for Aussies as far as MMA in the UFC, with Mark Hunt sort of kind of gone, Jake Matthews losing, Dan Kelly being on the older side. Build him up. Give him a guy like Talis Laitis. Give him a fight where he can sort of continue to evolve, work on his skills. If you feed him a Derek Brunson now, I think that could end badly. If you give him, say, a guy like Anderson Silva, that's another one that could end badly for him. I think take the slow route. He's 25 years old, Robert Whittaker. You don't need to rush him in there. He's got plenty of time. That's my thoughts. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, 100%. You said almost everything I was going to say exactly. I mean, first of all, I think you do build Whittaker slowly. I don't think he wants any part. Listen, I'm sure he wants a part of Derek Brunson. I don't think he does want any part of him, though. This is not the right time. Derek Brunson, as we talked about, is a wrecking machine, and he also doesn't have that huge name value where if he loses that fight, you can be like, oh yeah, but he lost to Derek Brunson. Because people don't understand how good Derek Brunson is, and Derek Brunson is awesome. And the two guys that you're really trying to develop, Brunson is on this great path, and as you said, Whittaker's on this great path. You don't want to set one of them back in a huge way before they're able to get up to that upper echelon. I think you keep building both of them. The best case scenario, Whittaker beats Brunson, then now you've got Brunson kind of falling out of the picture for a while. So I don't think it really makes a whole lot of sense to put them up against each other, because you've got two, guys that are trying to build up to that level. It's a great fight. Listen, if you want to make a great fight, you put them together, and I think it's awesome. I think Brunson wins it, but I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense promotionally to match them up together right now.
Yeah, if I had to pick right now, I would unfortunately be very unpatriotic, and I would pick Brunson, especially in a division like middleweight where you don't really have too many prospects. You really need to salvage all the ones that you do have. The other thing I was going to say, I think with Derek Brunson, he's kind of deserving of a better, of a sort of higher matchup. I think at one point he was going to face Gegard Mousasi at UFC 200. Gegard's facing Vitor Belfort. I don't think he's ready for a title shot yet or to be next in line. I think the winner of Vitor Belfort gets Derek Brunson, and if Derek Brunson can, beat the winner and do it, decisively, then maybe he'd be next for a title shot. That's what I think.
It's an interesting situation. It's almost at a point where, because I really rate Tallis highly, and I actually think he's got a good chance of beating Robert Whittaker. And then I worry that people aren't that high on Tallis, and he's never really gotten the respect or the credibility that he deserves. And then if Whittaker loses against Tallis, then people even shooting him harder with that loss. But yeah, it's going to be a tough choice for the UFC. Adam, quickly, do you think there's any chance Robert Whittaker versus Anderson Silva at UFC 205, or are we all just dreaming here?
I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it's the front runner necessarily, but it's a possibility. And I think that's a more interesting fight because you sell it, as we said. If he loses, okay, he's fighting one of the greatest fighters of all time. We know he's not at his peak anymore, but hey, he gave it a shot against the best, and he kind of measured where he was, and he's not quite to that level yet. And if he wins, then it's like, wow, now he's a true superstar coming off this big win. I think that we talked about the Brunson fight not making sense promotionally. That fight does make sense promotionally because either way, you can still sell and move, moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really on the fence on that fight because I know a lot of people on Twitter were like, Robert Whittaker versus Anderson Silva. Look, Anderson Silva may be not in his prime, but that's still a ridiculously hard matchup for Robert Whittaker. And people were talking about having that fight in Melbourne. I think that makes zero sense in Melbourne. Like, and people say, well, but he faced Uriah Hall. Yeah, he was supposed to face Uriah Hall at UFC 198, which was an all-Brazil card. I think theoretically they were teeing that up for a feel-good Anderson Silva moment where he beats Uriah Hall, and of course all the Brazilians are happy. But if that happens in Melbourne, that's going to be devastating for the Aussie fans. If you do it, say, hypothetically at UFC 205 or any international card, I think it makes a lot more sense because, again, if Anderson Silva wins, he's back. There's not as many expectations from the locals on Robert Whittaker, whereas if Robert Whittaker can pull off the upset and beat Anderson Silva, he's going to get that, real exposure that he otherwise wouldn't have on, essentially a local card here in Melbourne.
Yeah, we've been politely explaining to people on Twitter that it's unlikely that it's going to be a co-main event on a fight night here in Melbourne, and most likely would be on a pay-per-view. I mean, Anderson Silva would draw a lot of viewers. I don't think they just hide him on a fight night here in Melbourne. But let's talk about another person that draws a lot of viewers and is a big draw, GSP. A lot of people thought he was going to have the next title shot against Tyron Woodley. That is not happening now that Woodley will be fighting Thompson at UFC 205. By the way, that's going to be a great fight, and I can't wait to see it. But Adam, where does this leave GSP? Is he still going to be on UFC 206? And who's he going to fight? Are we looking at Nick Diaz? Is there anybody else that you think he could be fighting in Canada?
Yeah, it's my belief that he's still going to be on UFC 206. I mean, I've pitched it to my bosses that he's fighting there, and I'm going there to cover it based on my belief that GSP will be on the card, so I hope so.
And then your bosses will be like, I think it's GSP.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be too late to fight some sports, and the accommodation will be paid for.
He got hurt. He had to pull out of the fight. I don't know what to tell you. It's a weird promotional dynamic. I think there's a lot of things going on between the Reebok deal, between his agency's rivalry with WME. There's a whole lot of things at play, but I think in the end it gets done. And you're right. It becomes who does he fight? Now Nick Diaz makes the most sense. It's a huge fight. It's a massive fight. There's already history. There's already Nick Diaz can once again start talking about being drugged before who knows what he's going to say. That makes a lot of sense. That fight is great. That completely makes sense. But at the end of the day, GSP versus anybody makes sense to headline that card. It doesn't matter who he's in there with. I know GSP wants big name fights. He obviously can't get Woodley or Thompson now. They're booked for the event before. But really, GSP versus one of you two still sells. So what does it matter who's on the other end? I do think it's going to be Nick Diaz. There's still some things to work out as far as his suspension. He's got to get back in the program with Nevada and USADA. There's a whole lot of things that he has to work out. He's got to provide clean tests to Nevada for, I think it's 30 days before he can get licensed again. And we'll see how all of that shakes out. But I don't think it'll be too much of an issue if they want to make that fight. I think that fight can happen. But again, GSP versus anybody is fine.
I still feel like the reason why we're seeing Woodley versus Thompson is because they couldn't organize GSP versus Woodley. And again, that's no disrespect to Thompson because I'm super happy for him, but I think that's originally what the UFC wanted. Let's look at the other options. You got Johnny Hendricks for GSP. I mean, there's history. A win makes Johnny relevant again, but Johnny would have to really do something with that win, though, afterwards if it wasn't to be a big waste. That's a possibility. I think it's the least likely. You could do Robbie Lawler, the past versus the present. It's an exciting fight. A win does big things for either guy. If GSP, wins against Robbie Lawler, I mean, he just beat the former champion. If Robbie Lawler can beat GSP, he gets a massive rub. I think that's more unlikely. I think Nick Diaz is the fight they'd go for. You've got two legends. They're both a little bit older. They're both coming off big layoffs. So I feel like a loss doesn't really hurt either guy. They're both kind of on a similar level. I know the first fight wasn't the most exciting, but I don't think it really matters. You've got GSP make a comeback. Like you said, GSP coming back against, either me or Dennis, or if we wanted a real chance, it should probably be both of us at the same time. That would still sell. Nick Diaz is kind of in the same boat. Everybody loves Nick Diaz. The Diaz brothers in general. I feel like almost what Nate did and has accomplished in the last few months or the last year or so, that's helped Nick Diaz as well, just because they are the Diaz brothers. So if you have the massive comeback of Nick Diaz and the massive comeback of GSP, that's going to be a huge event. And I also think it doesn't really hurt anybody, divisionally or ranking-wise. It doesn't step on anybody's toes in terms of contenders. So I think that's the fight to make if they can make it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, Anderson Silva, they've been talking about the super fight for a while. I'm not saying it's likely going to happen, but it's another draw that people want to see. Who knows? Maybe they'll do something like that. Let's quickly talk about some other big news before we let you go, Adam, because we know you're a busy man. And by the way, if me and Casper verse GSP, you would have to verse him with us because you're a part of the Submission Radio team. Chael Sonnen moving over to Bellator. Now, personally to me, I did not expect this whatsoever. Chael Sonnen was talking back and forth with Tim Kennedy. I thought he was going to maybe fight him on his return. I was already sort of in my mind planning who he was going to fight when he returns to the UFC because they're in need of another draw. Sometimes you feel like Chael Sonnen coming back was a great thing for them. He's always talking about his relationship with Dana White and how good that is. So when I saw that he was over in Bellator, I really, really got surprised. I saw a couple of interviews with him where he mentioned that it didn't really cross his mind until later on, and he put on a few phone calls to Scott Coker, and the deal was done. I mean, for Scott Coker, this is perfect timing. Everybody is talking about Bellator. It feels like Bellator is a lot hotter now that Chael Sonnen signed to the company. Adam, was this a good move for Chael to move to Bellator and jump ship, leave the UFC?
Chael wants to have a payday, and he's going to get a payday. I'm going to be a little bit evasive. I don't usually do that with you guys, but I think there's reasons why this happened, and it's something I'm working on for a story that could come out potentially. But I think when and if the story of why he moved comes out, it would make a lot of sense. I'll say that. And he's had a lot of issues, with testing and everything in the past, and Chael's making the comeback now after this suspension has ended, obviously. So there's a lot of things going on with Sonnen, and I think it would make a lot of sense. If everything that I've heard is true, I think a lot of people would say, oh, yeah, that makes sense for why he's now in Bellator.
Right, that's interesting because I saw in an interview he said that him and Scott Coker have some kind of deal where he has to pay a huge fine if he fails a drug test and give up his pay. He also spoke about the fact that he likes the live TV model over the pay-per-view model, which sort of got me thinking because if there was a pay-per-view and he was headlining, you'd think that he would be making quite a lot of money, but then it got me thinking maybe while talking to Dana White, he realized the days of him headlining pay-per-views were over, and he took this guaranteed money deal instead. Do you think that had something to do with it?
Potentially. I think the biggest thing will be, where does he fight? I'm very interested to see where they put him. I think that's a huge question.
Well, we saw with, was it Texas, where Kimbo Slice failed a drug test and Ken Shamrock failed a drug test, and I think they got slapped with, 90-day, hilarious, comical 90-day, suspensions, which I think is sort of what you're angling for. I understand. Here's the interesting thing, though, and I'm curious what you come up with, Adam, because with USADA, if you look on their website, he's been tested 4 times since July. USADA usually don't reveal anything about drug tests unless they fail. Right, and nothing's been revealed yet. Right. So I don't know. We'll see. If it really is true and Chael Sonnen has passed all his USADA tests, that could be one thing. But hey, he's not in the UFC anymore. He doesn't have to go through round the clock, out of competition testing. And I understand what you're saying about where he fights. The other thing is, if you look at the sort of middleweight division at the moment, this isn't the middleweight division that Chael Sonnen left when he left the UFC. It's evolved. There's better guys. And if he wants to stay a pay-per-view draw, he's going to have to win. And I think that, the wins for Chael Sonnen in the UFC, there's a lot less of them. And you mentioned that sort of deal with Scott Coker about the $500,000, and he loses his entire purse if he fails a single drug test. Well, I mean, we're talking contracts here. Unless he shows us this actual contract, no one's ever going to know. Yeah. You might...
have you seen that?
Right. I mean, and what he said was, this is something between him and Scott Coker. This is between him and Bellator before it goes to the commission. AKA, it never has to be reported. So... Take it essentially how you want. It's a good selling point. But look, essentially, you hit the nail on the head, Adam. He wants to make paydays. I think there's a lot better fights for him in Bellator. Him and Tito, him and Vanderlei has to be made. Him and Rory, that's kind of interesting. And him and Fedor, those are 4 big paydays already. So, yeah, I think when you really think about it, and I definitely thought that he'd be, UFC bound when he returned. But if you think about it, this is definitely the right move for him.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a good move by Scott Coker and Bellator. We'll be interested to see what happens with him next. But yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be interesting to see how Chael spins. See, I agree with you guys. I mean, Chael has said stuff in the past that's just sort of been ridiculous. He's also ripped off word for word pro wrestling promos, and you don't know sometimes what kind of Chael you're getting. We've all interviewed him before, and sometimes you get a certain version of Chael who's promoting something, and then sometimes you get a more down-to-earth version of Chael who's talking about things as they are. He's also reported certain things that never happened. So we'll see what happens with it then. Casper, you mentioned some of the fun matchups, but Adam, before we let you go, if it was up to you, who does Chael Sonnen kick off his Bellator run with? Who does he fight first?
I think, you know what, if we're going to just be ridiculous, just fight Tito, whatever. I mean, it's stupid, it's crazy, but who's not going to watch it? It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of trash talk. Just let them fight.
Let me ask you, why, that's right. Sorry to cut in. Why do you think it's so crazy and stupid? Because I think it makes sense in a lot of ways.
He hasn't fought in forever. Tito Ortiz is what he is now. They're both. It's 2 old guys that can talk and will go promo for promo with each other. Just throw them in there and let them fight. I don't think it's interesting on an MMA level. I think it's interesting on a promotional level, and just I don't have a huge. And Bellator they're there to, and Scott Coker will say this. We put on great fights, and we put on some fights that are for people to tune in that wouldn't ordinarily tune in. That's the kind of fight that they like to make. So let them make it, and you have to watch it. I mean, UFC does it sometimes too with CM Punk, and they're throwing him in there to a fight that he doesn't belong in. I don't have any interest in actually watching Tito Ortiz fight ever again, but Tito Ortiz and Chael Sonnen talking at a press conference, I'm kind of into.
Well, I've got more interest in seeing that than him versus Royce Gracie or Ken Shamrock or something like that. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Adam, thank you so much for your time. It is Adam Hill, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Adam Hill LVRJ. He is the man. Him and Heidi Fang doing amazing work. You guys have been putting up some new videos, some new breakdowns. Anything that fans need to be looking out for, Adam?
No, we got some great stuff from this week, and as I said, great picks tonight. So try to follow along. We'll do picks every single fight card, and we've been pretty good lately. And media day for UFC 204 coming up this week in LA. So we'll have all the coverage from down there with Bisping and Henderson.
Well, there you guys go. Maybe if you follow Adam, you can make a little bit of money. Not easy to do in this MMA betting world, but if the man has the picks, he's on a roll. So thank you so much, Adam. And guys, we'll be right back with some final comments, some thank yous, and a couple of thoughts right after this.
Yeah, that's right. El Guapo here. That means the pretty face. All you guys out there, you're listening to Submission Radio. Godspeed and party on.
All right, we're back here on Submission Radio, episode 100. Still a lot of stuff to talk about, especially with this being a landmark episode for us. But before we jump to that, we still have a couple of things we want to talk about regards to Chael Sonnen. Really appreciate Adam Hill jumping on before. And again, you guys will probably hear him on in the future. We love having him on the program. But Casper, couple of final thoughts on the Chael Sonnen situation. We're talking about USADA before and the drug testing thing, him going over to Bellator. I know you got a couple of other thoughts you want to sort of share right now as we're discussing this whole thing.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people are looking at it as, Chael Sonnen failed a USADA drug test, and that's why he's somewhat been banished, and now he has to go to Bellator. I don't think that's the case. Like I said to Adam, they haven't reported any failings. But let's not say this is Chael Sonnen. Let's say in general, there is nothing stopping any fighter from going into the USADA pool, right? Which theoretically, if Chael Sonnen did, I'm sure he had some kind of intent on fighting in the UFC, right? Why else would you go through with getting to the USADA testing pool? Unless you wanted to show to people that he's clean. But theoretically, there's nothing stopping a fighter going through the testing, going through the 4 months, taking absolutely nothing, then going over to Bellator, who is a lot more relaxed and, far less stringent with their testing. And you got to remember, when you're being regulated by the government, they don't have out-of-competition testing. You essentially need to show up on fight night, be clean, and in certain states, like they're talking about California, which is pretty good as far as, their testing. But if they go somewhere like, say, a Texas, I mean, you just have to show up on fight night and be clean. And as long as you're clean, that's fine. And I'm not saying he's a liar, but I don't necessarily buy that there's a $500,000 fine and he loses his purse if he fails a drug test.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people are sort of jumping ahead of themselves thinking that's what's going on. But yeah, it will be a very interesting situation. And, I find it interesting that Chael Sonnen made that comment to Josh Gross. And that was a great article, by the way, on Bleacher Report that he wrote about Chael going to Bellator. I found it interesting that he mentioned that, if I fail a drug test, it's going to be this fine. I'm going to pay $500,000. I just found it a bit comical. I thought, here we go, Chael sort of promoting the fact that everything's going to be cool. And I just found it funny that was a part of his sort of, I suppose, return promo. Hey, I can't stuff up because this is what's going on. But, yeah, I agree with you. Nothing's certain at the moment. I'm really excited to sort of see what happens and who he gets. And if we even see him, fight in Bellator. It's all kind of crazy at the moment.
I'm sure we will. I think that him and Tito makes a lot of sense. Both guys are already promoting it. Actually, I don't know if you saw this, Tito doing some funny things. He took that promo of Chael from Bellator where he was, doing a lot of the same rhymes that he always does, which are entertaining. And then afterwards, he put on Shooter McGavin off Happy Gilmore. When he's like, stay out of my way, I'll make you pay. And then Adam Sandler's like, oh, yeah, I just may. Maybe I'll go eat a bunch of hay or something like that. I don't know if you saw that, but that was on Tito Ortiz's Instagram. So the games have already begun. I like that fight, but we have to do Chael Sonnen versus Vanderlei. I feel like there's been all this promo in the UFC. It's a fight that has to happen. If they can bring Vanderlei essentially back from Ryzen, it has to happen. What do you think about this Rory McDonald versus Chael fight, Dennis?
Look, I think people will be interested in watching it. And I know Rory McDonald wants to do it because it's a sort of a big money fight and a lot of people have interest in it. I guess I'm just not that interested in it because I feel like Rory's sort of the future of Bellator when it comes to that welterweight division or wherever he chooses to fight. And to me, his path is more sort of like become the champion.
Yeah.
Show that the championship is actually worth something. Not that it's not worth anything now, but really sort of bring prestige to it and stay away from these sort of, I don't want to call it a silly fight, but really a sort of a fight that does. Yeah, a showcase fight. I guess a lot of people kind of shit on it. They'll see it as an entertainment thing, but it's not really going to prove anything. Like, I'll watch it if it happens, but I think there's different pathways for McDonald to go down. I'm more down with this whole Chael Sonnen Fedor fight because to me, Sonnen's been trashing Fedor for quite some time. It's almost like in the back of his mind, he thought at some point he'll have an opportunity to fight him. You can bring up stuff from the archive from, years ago of him saying Fedor's terrible and all this stuff. And to be honest with you, Fedor hasn't really fought the highest level of competitors lately. So, funnily enough, even though Sonnen's a middleweight and sort of older, it's probably going to be one of the tougher challenges that Fedor has had for quite some time. So, in that regard, that's going to be kind of interesting as well.
Well, we saw, Matt Lindland had some success against Fedor, and they're obviously both products of Team Quest. So yeah, that'd be a matchup that I would love to see just for the build up, just to see the crazy Sonnen quotes, and I think it'd be a fun fight if nothing else. I agree with you with this Rory McDonald fight, or at least that's the way I saw it. Yeah, I think Rory McDonald, he's kind of the kind of guy who you want to put the strap on Rory McDonald at welterweight and middleweight if you can. But then I kind of thought, everybody sort of already looks at Rory McDonald as this mixed martial art, this purist. He's a good fighter. He's a well-regarded fighter. I feel like his name could be a little bit bigger. Imagine if he goes up to middleweight. I think that's an interesting matchup just because Chael Sonnen, regardless what you think about him, he's got great wrestling. He is the bigger man. And imagine if Rory McDonald could beat Chael Sonnen. I think that would actually be a really good win for him.
Yeah, look, I think it definitely builds his profile. But I think if I'm Sonnen, I'm staying away from McDonald. He's got those huge fights that he can have. I'm not sure how many fights he's going to have in Bellator, but let's say if he's got 3 fights that he's going to have. I mean, Tito, I think that's probably a given at this point. Then Vanderlei. And then he builds to a Fedor fight. And at his age, who knows, maybe around that point he'll be retiring depending on how all of that goes. But again, I would not be opposed with Chael fighting Rory McDonald. As long as he's fighting these guys who are well-known and these fights are fun, I'm down with it. When it comes to a point that he's fighting guys that no one really knows and these guys are killers and just going to destroy him, then that's when I sort of tap out and I go, nah, I'm out of here. But as long as he's fighting these fights and it's fun, and I mean, McDonald will probably beat him, but at least there, both guys, and it's worth it. I'm still down for that. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens there. And I agree with you. I'm happy that he's in Bellator. I really think this gets things exciting. It puts I haven't seen people so excited about Bellator in a really, really, really long time. And Sonnen's one of those guys where you have Kimbo and you have Ken Shamrock, and these guys are sort of big names. They're sort of big draws, but they're so past their prime. And when you watch them fight, they don't look very good. Now, Sonnen might be at that stage when we see him. It might be a repeat of that Stephan Bonner, Tito Ortiz fight. I hope not, but it might be. But he's probably one of those big-name guys that's still got a little bit of a run left in him, depending who you put him up against. So we might see some decent performances from Chael Sonnen, depending on how things go. So, yeah, I think it's a good move by Bellator, and good on Chael. I agree with you when you mentioned him going to UFC and middleweight being stacked and light heavyweight having things going on there as well. Last thing I'd want to see is him go to the UFC and get smashed a couple of times and then retire. So it's kind of it's like a farewell tour. It like prolongs his career and gives us a few fun moments before he hangs it up.
All right, well, look, Submission Radio, episode 100. We've made it. We've made it pretty far. It's been, I think, around about 2.5 years. My maths is terrible, but the first episode was March the 22nd, 2014, and here we are in 2016 in September. It's been a crazy, wild ride thus far, and of course, we couldn't have done it without the help of a lot of people over the years. So we just want to take a bit of time to sort of say thank you to, I don't want to say everybody, because when you say thank yous, you always forget somebody, you always forget a bunch of people, so I hope nobody takes it personally. But we have compiled a bit of a list, and we'll try and obviously get to everyone. I'm just going to go through a bunch of people, and then Dennis, you can sort of fill in any of the blanks, any of the funny stories, or anybody that you feel I've missed. So the first 2 people, obviously Justin Alea and Christian Cecchini, our videographers, Elias Cepeda, Mike Dice, Adam Hill, who we just spoke to, Simon Head, Kierig Janess of The Underground, James Lynch, Damon Martin, Tommy Toehold, who did a phenomenal job, Danny Acosta, Jim Edwards of Flow Combat, Ryan McKinnell of Yahoo Sports, Dwayne Finley, Michael Bean, Adam Ireland, all the guys at Bloody Elbow like Mookie Alexander and Kareem Zidane and Anton Tabuena, Zane Simon, Tim Burke, Tim Bissell, Kid Nate, of course, is a very integral part, Dave Meltzer, who we just spoke to before, the guys at MMA Fighting, obviously Luke Thomas, Errol Hawani, Mike Ramondi, Jed Mashu, David Sayman, Casey Layden, and Esther Lynn have always been lovely to us. Brian Tucker, all the guys at MMA Mania, like Jesse Holland and Adam Gillen Jr. and Steve Kwan and Michael Stetz. The MMA Junkie guys who have helped us a lot at every event, like John Morgan and Ken Hathaway. Even Mike Bond and Fernando Prades. All the Aussie guys like Carl and Jared from Fight Live. Nick Walshaw of the Daily Telegraph. Brendan Bradford, Fight News Australia. Pete from the UFC. Adam Hunter and MMA Roasted and all the guys there. Jeremy Botter, Middle Easy, MMA Weekly, Yahoo Sports, Bleacher Report, UpRocks, BJPen.com, Paul Dollery from the 42.ie, SportsJoe.ie, Dana Beckham from Fightline, Jamie Panic from MMA Torch, Raj Giri from Wrestling Inc., Brian Alvarez of the Wrestling Observer and Figure 4 Online, MMAnews.com, MMA Frenzy, all the gang at Low Kick MMA like Rory Kernigan and Mike Drahota and Mike Henkin. And as we've just mentioned, these are all people that have helped push our work and sort of show off our content and our coverage. And without all those people, who knows if we'd be where we are today. Anyone that I missed, Dennis? Any other comments that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, look, I mean, we don't get a chance to really talk about these people and really talk about the MMA community as it entails to media and this crazy world that we live in. But because it is the 100th episode, I mean, I think it's just important to mention that we always look at the fighters, we look at the promoters, we look at what's going on there. But what people don't realize is those names that you mentioned, I mean, that's a wealth of people. And we came into this game in the day that you mentioned in 2014, and everyone has just been so nice to us. They've been open to working with us. They've been open to ideas. We've met them. We've hung out with them. We've had buffet lunches with them. We've had drinks with them. We've gotten to know them on a personal level. And just outside the submission radio world, they have really influenced us on a personal level. We're friends with these people. We're a part of a crazy band of MMA media. And these are the nicest people you can be around. I mean, we've been at different stages with submission radio. We were at the start where people could have just plainly told us to fuck off and go do something else. And these guys have been inviting, warm, welcoming, giving us opportunities and letting us show them what we have. And it's crazy, this journey that we've been on, 100 episodes. It sort of feels like we've been through a lot, but we started off, I suppose, sort of closer to the bottom level. Now that we're at a certain level, we're in a position we can start working with up-and-coming journalists and helping people out, and we try and do that through Twitter all the time. And if you want to get in touch with us, you always can. DMs are open, and we love getting people's work out there and spreading the joy. But these are wonderful people, and they have really given us so many wonderful memories, so many crazy times, and they've just been great to us throughout this whole process. So I know you've mentioned all those names, but, guys like Keurig Jeunesse, who runs mixedmartialarts.com, who's always been fantastic to us, who's always put our stuff up on his website and sending us nice messages about our interviews every week. And this guy at the start didn't really even know who we were, but just appreciated the work that we put in. Elias Cepeda, just being on the program over and over and over and putting up our stuff on Fox Sports and just being such a great guy and honest with us. And just welcoming us into the team. And now we have these new people that we're close friends with, Simon Head, Danny Acosta, all these guys that you mentioned, who it's just a pleasure being around these guys. And I think, Cass, doing the show, there's a lot of benefits to it. I mean, it's crazy work. We work around the clock. It's pretty much a never-ending job. We get to talk to the best fighters in the world. We get to speak to you guys. We get to interact with you guys and meet our listeners and chat to our listeners, and that's rewarding. But these relationships, I think once it's all said and done, that might be one of the things that I appreciate the most.
For sure. And I think I hope we haven't forgotten anyone, but one of the biggest thank yous also is to you yourself listening right now to this show. I mean, we started on such a small scale, and we're very happy and proud to, what Submission Radio has sort of grown to. And really that growth, that represents you guys, the listeners, the people that listen every week, the people that, take the time to leave a review on iTunes or listen to the episode. We see when the episode comes out, and we see a few seconds later, there's already a bunch of likes. Obviously, when episodes are 2 to 3 hours long, obviously those people haven't gone through the entire episode to actually decide whether they liked it or not, but we see that as you guys giving the support and sort of showing the appreciation. So we want to thank you guys for everybody that comments, whether it's a negative comment, whether it's a positive comment, whether it's feedback. criticism, anything like that, we always appreciate it, guys, and we try and read as many comments as possible on YouTube. It's harder these days because there's a lot more of them, and we don't, I think, respond as much as we used to, but don't get us wrong, we still read those comments, and we'll try and respond as much as possible. We definitely read all your emails, all your Twitter messages, all your iTunes reviews and things like that, so we really literally, you know, as much as we couldn't have done it without the help of all these journalists and people in the MMA community, we could have done absolutely nothing if it wasn't for you guys listening. So a massive thank you to you guys, the listeners, for, you know, really, I guess, bringing us to where we are now and making Submission Radio what it is.
Yeah, that's right. And I've seen a few comments from time to time, people saying, hey, get on these guys now before they blow up and become big. But I think one of the main goals for you and me, Cass, has always been to stay grounded, stay on the same level, no matter what happens to us in the future. Who knows if we'll get bigger or smaller or whatever. Our main focus is keeping that relationship alive with you listeners. And no matter what's going on with us, we'll always take the time to write you a message, answer your questions, tweet you back, message you back, and help out whatever way we can, whether it's tweeting out your local fight or a local promotion that's happening or a new video that you made. We enjoy doing that stuff. We enjoy helping you out, and we appreciate you listening to us and giving us the opportunities to be able to read your messages and have those great times.
Yeah, for sure. And while we're thanking people, of course, you have to thank this week's guests, the wonderful Bill Goldberg. Thank you so much for coming on and making this a special episode. Stipe Miocic, the champ, he's about to go on a holiday. He literally took the interview while he was at work. What a nice guy. Thanking him for making this a special episode. Don Frye, who's been like a cornerstone of Submission Radio through the good times, through the dark times, through all the times. So we want to thank him for coming on the show, and we always appreciate him obviously chatting with us and entertaining you guys. Dave Meltzer, who's been on the show countless times, all the way back to years and years and years and years and years ago to the previous Submission Radio. Adam Hill, who I think he himself in the last few weeks, in the last few episodes, is almost becoming a cornerstone of Submission Radio. And there's another man that obviously made this episode special. Dennis, do you want to remind everybody who that was?
Yes, Cass, that would be the man himself, Tommy Toehold. No one knows what he looks like, but just quickly on this guy, I mean, he was a guest on our show a long time ago when we were still kicking things off. And that interview, by the way, if you guys can find it, I mean, me and Casper were still building up interview skills back then. There was some wild things in that interview. It was just absolutely ridiculous. But to go from that point where Tommy was a guy that was on Fox Sports and a guy that everybody respected and appreciated, to just being a regular part of the show. And I know you guys listened to the part today that he did for the 100th episode. He is bar none, one of the nicest guys in the MMA industry. And I always see it on Twitter. There's people throwing him curveballs, asking him these crazy questions. He's always busy, and he's always responding to everyone. The guy is truly a gem in the industry. Not only is his work great, but he is an absolutely great guy. We want to thank him for the fun sketch that he did for this 100th episode. It was great. All his stuff is great. And look, we look forward to one day seeing the man in real life and having a beer with him. But no doubt about it, Tommy Toehold, a part of the Submission Radio family. So a big thanks to him. Thanks to everybody that Casper mentioned. And guys, before we let you go, just a quick reminder, UFC Melbourne is in November, but we're going to have some fun content for you coming out at the start of next week. We can't let you know exactly what it is yet because we ourselves don't know, but be prepared. We're going to have some fun stuff coming to the channel. Keep an eye on it. If you're a local Aussie, you're not going to want to miss this.
Yeah, I think you pretty much couldn't have said it better. That's pretty much it. Episode 100. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and Sheena will be back next week. Till then, stay safe.